There's something deeply wrong with almost human faces. You've felt it. That sudden recoil when you see a lifelike robot or a CGI character that's just slightly off. The eyes don't quite track right. The smile doesn't reach the muscles around the mouth. Something in your brain screams danger. We call it the uncanny valley. The term comes from robotics researcher Masahiro Mori, who noticed something strange in 1970. As robots became more human-like, people felt more comfortable with them. But only up to a point. Get too close to human without being fully human, and the response flips. Comfort becomes revulsion. Warmth becomes dread. The graph of human response looks like a valley. Cartoon robots are fine. Humanoid robots are better. But almost human robots drop into a valley of disgust. Then fully human faces climb back out the other side. Here's what's strange about this. It's not learned. You don't have to teach a baby to fear the uncanny. Show an infant a normal face, they're fine. Show them a face with slightly wrong proportions, they stare longer. Their heart rate changes. Something ancient in their brain is processing threat. Monkeys have it too. Researchers showed macaque monkeys realistic monkey faces and unrealistic ones. The monkeys looked longer at the unrealistic faces. Their neurons fired differently. They treated almost real faces as something to investigate carefully, something potentially dangerous. This suggests the uncanny valley goes back millions of years, long before humans, long before we had any technology to create realistic faces. So why would evolution build this response into us? The standard answer is disease detection. A face that looks almost human but not quite might signal infection. Neurological damage. Something contagious you should avoid. The uncanny valley kept our ancestors away from the sick. But there's a problem with that theory. It doesn't explain the intensity of the response. Seeing someone with a disease makes you cautious. It doesn't trigger existential dread. The uncanny valley isn't just that person looks sick, it's that thing is pretending to be human. Some researchers think the answer is darker. Maybe the uncanny valley evolved to help us detect something that was almost human, but wasn't. Something that looked like us, moved like us, but was fundamentally different. And here's where the evidence gets interesting. For most of human history, we weren't alone. For 200,000 years, we shared this planet with other humans. Not metaphorically, not ancestors, other species of humans, walking around, making tools, living their lives, looking almost like us, but not quite. Neanderthals are the famous ones. They lived in Europe and Western Asia from about 400,000 years ago until 40,000 years ago. When modern humans arrived in Europe 45,000 years ago, Neanderthals were already there. They'd been there for hundreds of thousands of years. And here's what Neanderthals looked like: stocky, heavily muscled, barrel-chested to handle the cold. Their faces were different, bigger brow ridges, larger noses, faces that projected forward more than ours. But walk past one on the street in modern clothes, you might not look twice. You might just think they looked a bit off. Their brains were actually bigger than ours. They made sophisticated tools. They buried their dead with flowers. They cared for disabled members of their group. One Neanderthal skeleton shows a man who lived years after losing his arm. Someone fed him. Someone protected him. They were smart. They were human in every way that mattered, but they weren't us. And then there were the Denisovans. We barely know what they looked like. We found a finger bone, a jaw, a few teeth. DNA analysis shows they were different from both us and Neanderthals. They lived in Asia. They were there when modern humans arrived. In 2004, researchers found something on an island in Indonesia. Tiny skeletons, adults, that stood 3.5 feet tall. They had small brains but made stone tools. They hunted. They used fire. They lived until at least 50,000 years ago, maybe later. They called them Homo Floresiensis, hobbits in the press, and modern humans overlapped with them too. Here's what this means. When your ancestors spread out of Africa, they didn't move into empty land. They moved into a world full of other humans, different humans, humans who looked almost right but not quite. Imagine meeting a Neanderthal. You're hunting in a forest in what's now France. It's 40,000 years ago. You see movement, a person. You think it's someone from your group. But as they get closer, something's wrong. The face is too heavy, the body too thick. The way they move is almost right but slightly off. Your brain would be screaming, "That's human!" But it's not human. Both things at once. This is the uncanny valley. Not a modern response to robots, an ancient response to other humans. And here's where it gets darker. We know modern humans and Neanderthals met. We know because we have Neanderthal DNA. About 2% of non-African human DNA comes from Neanderthals, which means our ancestors didn't just meet them, they had children with them. But something happened. Neanderthals disappeared. So did Denisovans. So did the hobbits. So did every other human species. Within about 10,000 years of modern humans arriving anywhere, the other humans were gone. Nobody knows exactly why. Climate change played a role, competition for resources, maybe disease. But the timing is suspicious. We show up. They disappear. Some researchers think there was violence, not war exactly, but conflict. Small groups meeting, tension, fighting over territory or food, the kind of violence that happens when two similar species compete. And if that's true, then the uncanny valley makes terrible sense. It evolved to help us identify them. The other humans, the ones who looked almost like us but weren't, quite right. The ones who might be dangerous, the ones we might need to avoid or drive away. Your ancestors who felt that uncanny valley response survived. They were cautious around faces that looked almost human. They didn't trust the not quite right, and they passed that caution to you. The ones who didn't feel it. Maybe they were too trusting. Maybe they walked up to a group of Neanderthals thinking they were friends. Maybe that didn't go well. Evolution is brutal. It keeps the traits that help you survive. It keeps the fears that keep you alive. And here's the really disturbing part. We have evidence of violence between modern humans and Neanderthals. A Neanderthal skull from Iraq shows trauma from a projectile weapon. Modern humans used projectile weapons. Neanderthals didn't. Someone threw a spear at that Neanderthal's head. A cave in Spain shows something worse. Neanderthal bones with cut marks. The kind of cut marks you see when someone removes meat from bones. The kind of marks that suggest cannibalism. And the timing matches when modern humans were in the area. We don't know if modern humans killed and ate Neanderthals regularly. Probably not, but it happened at least once. Which means the possibility was there. The other humans weren't just competitors. They were potential threats, or potential food. Your brain's response to the uncanny valley might be remembering this, not consciously. But deep in the ancient structures, the parts that kept your ancestors alive when the world was full of things that looked almost human, think about what that means. For 200,000 years, seeing a face that looked almost right but not quite meant real danger. It meant another species. It meant potential violence. Your ancestors who felt fear survived. The ones who didn't feel it might not have. And then, about 40,000 years ago, we were alone. The last Neanderthals died. The last Denisovans disappeared. The last hobbits went extinct. For the first time, in millions of years, only one human species walked the earth. But the fear didn't go away. It couldn't. It was built too deep, hardwired into the visual processing centers of your brain. The parts that evaluate faces happen fast, before conscious thought, before you can tell yourself it's okay. Show a baby an almost human face, their brain reacts. They haven't learned about Neanderthals, they haven't heard about other human species, but something in their brain knows. Almost human means danger. Monkeys have it too, remember, which means this goes back even further, before humans, before Neanderthals, back to some common ancestor that had to distinguish between members of its own species and similar species, between safe and dangerous, between us and them. But for humans, it got reinforced. For 200,000 years it got reinforced every time someone met another human species, every time the almost right face meant potential threat. Every generation that survived was a generation that felt the fear. And now we make robots, we make CGI characters, we create faces that look almost human, and that ancient fear fires. Your brain sees the almost human face and screams danger, even though there's no danger anymore, even though the other humans are gone. The uncanny valley is a ghost, an evolutionary ghost, a fear of something that doesn't exist anymore. But the fear remains because it's carved too deep to remove, written into your DNA, passed down from ancestors who needed it to survive. Some researchers argue this isn't the full story. They say the disease theory still matters, that we evolved to fear sick faces and that's enough to explain the uncanny valley. And they're partly right. Disease avoidance is part of it. But it doesn't explain the intensity. It doesn't explain why the response is so visceral, so immediate, so overwhelming. Disease makes you cautious. Other human species made you terrified. And it doesn't explain the timing. The uncanny valley response is strongest for faces that are almost human but not quite. Not obviously different, not clearly another species, but almost right. The kind of almost right that Neanderthals would have been. If this theory is correct, then every time you feel the uncanny valley, you're feeling an ancient war. A war that ended 40,000 years ago. A war we won. But the fear of the enemy remains, encoded in your neurons, waiting for a face that looks almost human but not quite. The other humans are gone. We made sure of that. Whether through violence or competition or simply outbreeding them, we're all that's left. But your brain doesn't know they're gone. It's still watching for them, still ready to feel that spike of fear when something looks almost right but not quite. This is what evolution does. It doesn't remove old adaptations just because they're not needed anymore. It leaves them in place. And sometimes those old adaptations trigger in new situations. The fear of snakes becomes a fear of garden hoses in the dark. The fear of falling becomes a fear of heights. The fear of other human species becomes a fear of realistic robots. We carry our history and our fears. Every phobia is a story. Every instinctive response is an echo of something that mattered once. Something that kept someone alive long enough to pass their genes to you. The uncanny valley is one of those echoes. A fear of faces that look almost human. A fear that made sense when the world was full of humans who weren't quite us. A fear that doesn't make sense anymore but remains because evolution doesn't delete. It only adds. And maybe that's okay. Maybe it's right to feel uneasy around things that pretend to be human but aren't. Maybe that old instinct still serves us in new ways, helping us distinguish between genuine and fake, between real emotion and simulated emotion, between human and artificial, Or maybe it's just a scar, a reminder that we weren't always alone, that once we shared this world with others, and that somewhere in the deep history of our species we decided we didn't want to share anymore. It's strange when you think about it. We're scattered across the planet, different time zones, different languages, different lives, but we're all here, listening to the same story about why our brains react the way they do, about fears that don't make sense anymore but won't go away. Maybe that's comforting somehow, knowing we all carry the same ancient responses, the same evolutionary baggage. We're more alike than we think. Here's the thing about disease. It's been killing us since before we were human, long before cities, before farming, before we even looked like modern humans. Disease was there. Parasites, bacteria, viruses, all evolving alongside us, all trying to use our bodies as resources. And our ancestors who survived, they were the ones whose brains learned to spot the warning signs. This is where the uncanny valley might have started, not with robots or dolls. With sick people, think about what disease does to a face. The eyes change first, they lose focus, or they shine too bright with fever. The skin colour shifts, too pale, too flushed, sometimes yellow, sometimes grey. The movements become wrong, too slow, too jerky, too weak. A sick person looks almost right. But something's off. Your brain catches it before you can name it. That's the uncanny valley response. That's your ancestors whispering a warning. Stay away from that person. Something's wrong with them. You'll catch it. This theory comes from researchers studying evolutionary psychology. They notice something interesting. The same facial features that trigger uncanny valley responses are often signs of disease. Asymmetry, unnatural skin tones, strange eye movements, odd facial expressions. These are all symptoms of various illnesses, and we react to them with disgust and fear. The exact emotions that make us keep our distance. It makes sense when you think about it. Our ancestors lived in small groups, 20 people, 50 people, maybe 100 at most. If disease got into your group, it could kill everyone. There was no medicine, no antibiotics, no hospitals, just your immune system and luck. So the humans who survived were the ones whose brains screamed danger when they saw someone who looked sick, even if they couldn't explain why, even if the person seemed mostly normal. That tiny wrongness was enough. Stay away. Don't touch. Don't get close. The disgust response is key here. Disgust is one of our most powerful emotions. It makes us recoil. It makes us feel physically sick ourselves. It's designed to keep us away from contamination. And what triggers disgust? Things that might make us sick. Rotting food, feces, vomit, bad smells, and faces that look wrong. Faces that look almost human but not quite. Because that wrongness might mean disease, studies show this connection clearly. When people look at uncanny faces, the same brain regions light up as when they see contaminated food or other disease threats. The insula activates. That's the part of your brain that processes disgust. The amygdala fires. That's fear. Your brain is treating that slightly wrong face the same way it treats spoiled meat. As a contamination risk, as something dangerous that needs to be avoided. This isn't conscious. You don't think, that face looks diseased, I should stay away. You just feel wrong, uncomfortable, disgusted. Your body wants distance. Your brain is doing the math without telling you. And here's what makes this theory powerful. It explains why the uncanny valley is so specific. Why it's triggered by faces that are almost human but not quite. Because that's exactly what a diseased human looks like. Almost normal. But something's wrong. A completely inhuman face doesn't trigger the response. A robot that looks obviously mechanical Fine. A cartoon character? No problem, they're clearly not human. Your disease detection system doesn't activate. There's no contamination risk. But a face that's 95% human? That's when alarm bells ring. Because that could be a sick human. That could be someone in your tribe who's infected. That could be someone who might give you whatever they have. The theory gets even more interesting when you look at cultural differences. Some cultures show stronger uncanny valley responses than others. And those differences might relate to disease pressure. Populations that historically faced more infectious diseases show stronger disgust responses overall. They're more sensitive to contamination cues. They have stricter hygiene practices. They're more careful about who they interact with. And they tend to show stronger uncanny valley responses. Their brains are more sensitive to faces that look slightly wrong, because in their ancestral environment, that sensitivity saved lives. This connects to something called behavioral immune system theory. The idea is that we have a psychological defense system that works alongside our biological immune system. Our bodies fight disease with antibodies and white blood cells. Our minds fight disease by making us avoid sick people in the first place. The behavioral immune system makes us feel disgust. It makes us notice things that might be contaminated. It makes us keep our distance from potential threats. And it makes us react to faces that look wrong. Because throughout human history, wrong-looking faces often meant disease. Think about what diseases do to appearance. Smallpox left distinctive scars. Leprosy changed facial features. Plague caused swelling and discoloration. Parasites made people look gaunt and strange. Fever made eyes look different. Infections changed skin color. Our ancestors saw these signs every day. The people who paid attention lived. The people who ignored the signs got sick and died. Over thousands of generations, the humans who survived were the ones whose brains had learned to spot even subtle signs of disease, the ones who felt that wrongness and stayed away. But here's where it gets complicated. This system isn't perfect. It makes mistakes. Because it evolved to be sensitive, not accurate. Better to avoid 100 healthy people who look slightly off than to miss one sick person who could infect you. So we react to things that aren't actually dangerous. We feel uncanny valley responses to dolls and robots and CGI characters. Because our disease detection system is seeing patterns that aren't there, it's being triggered by the wrong thing. This is called a false positive. And evolution loves false positives when the cost of a false negative is death. If avoiding a weird-looking doll costs you nothing but missing a diseased person costs you your life, your brain will choose to avoid anything that looks even slightly wrong. That's why the uncanny valley feels so strong. Why it's so hard to overcome. It's not a bug in our programming. It's a feature. An overly sensitive alarm system that kept our ancestors alive. The disease avoidance theory also explains why the uncanny valley is specifically about faces. We could have evolved to feel creeped out by almost human hands, or almost human bodies. But the response is strongest for faces. Why? Because faces are where disease shows up first. The eyes, the skin, the expression. These change before the rest of the body shows obvious symptoms. A face can look wrong while the person still seems mostly healthy, and that's exactly when you need to start avoiding them, before they're obviously sick, before they've already infected everyone. Your brain is reading faces constantly, automatically, looking for micro-expressions and subtle changes. It's incredibly good at it. You can spot a fake smile in milliseconds. You can tell when someone's eyes don't match their expression. You notice tiny asymmetries and color changes. This skill evolved partly for social reasons, reading emotions, understanding intentions, but it also evolved for disease detection, spotting the subtle signs that someone's sick before they even know it themselves. And when something triggers that detection system, even slightly, you feel it. That's the uncanny valley, your disease detection alarm going off, telling you something's wrong, telling you to stay away. The theory has evidence beyond just brain scans. Researchers have found that people who are more sensitive to disease cues in general also show stronger uncanny valley responses. People who are more easily disgusted by contamination are more bothered by uncanny faces. The two responses are linked, and it works the other way too. When people are primed to think about disease, their uncanny valley responses get stronger. Show someone pictures of sick people first, then show them an almost human robot, and they'll rate it as more creepy than if they hadn't seen the disease pictures. The disease avoidance system is activated, it's looking for threats, and suddenly that robot face looks more threatening, more wrong, more dangerous. This happens below conscious awareness. People don't realize they're connecting the robot to disease. They just feel more uncomfortable. Their brain is making associations they can't see. So the disease avoidance theory gives us a clear evolutionary reason for the uncanny valley. It explains why it exists, why it's so strong, why it's specifically about faces, why it's triggered by almost human but not quite. All of it makes sense if you think about disease. But here's the thing, this probably isn't the whole story. Disease avoidance explains a lot, but it might not explain everything. Because there's another threat our ancestors faced. Another reason to be afraid of something that looks almost human. Other hominins. Here's the thing about human evolution. We weren't alone. For most of our history, we shared this planet with other human species, not humans who looked exactly like us, but close, really close, close enough to be disturbing. Neanderthals, Denisovans, Homo erectus, Homo floresiensis, and others we're still discovering. They walked upright. They had hands like ours, faces that were almost human, but not quite. And our ancestors would have seen them, encountered them, maybe traded with them, maybe fought them, maybe worse. This is the other human species theory of the uncanny valley, and it's darker than the disease theory, because it suggests we evolved to fear and avoid beings that looked almost human because they were our competition, our enemies, maybe even our prey. Think about what we know. Modern humans appeared in Africa around 300,000 years ago, but we didn't leave Africa until about 70,000 years ago, and when we did, the world was already full of other humans. Neanderthals lived across Europe and Western Asia. They'd been there for 200,000 years. They were perfectly adapted to the Ice Age, strong, smart, successful. They had tools, fire, culture, they buried their dead, they cared for their sick. They were human in almost every way that mattered. But they looked different. Their faces were different. Bigger brow ridges, longer skulls, wider noses, different jaw structure. If you saw a Neanderthal today, you'd know something was off. They'd look almost human, but wrong. That wrongness would trigger something in your brain, the uncanny valley. And here's what happened when modern humans met Neanderthals. Within a few thousand years, the Neanderthals were gone, extinct. After 200,000 years of success, they vanished, right after we showed up. That's probably not a coincidence. We don't know exactly what happened. There are theories: climate change, disease, competition for resources, interbreeding that diluted their population. Maybe all of these things. But the timing is clear. We arrived. They disappeared. And if our ancestors were in conflict with Neanderthals, they would have needed to identify them quickly, tell them apart from their own people, know who was safe and who was dangerous, who was us and who was them. The Uncanny Valley would have done that job perfectly. See a face that looks almost human but not quite. Feel instant discomfort, unease, fear. That's not one of us. Stay alert. Be careful. Maybe attack first. This isn't just speculation. We have evidence that humans and Neanderthals fought. Neanderthal bones with weapon marks. Human bone with injuries that match Neanderthal weapons. Cave sites that show one group displacing another, sometimes violently, and we have evidence they tried to avoid each other. For thousands of years, humans and Neanderthals lived in the same regions but didn't mix much. Different caves, different hunting grounds, different territories, like two groups that knew to stay apart. When they did interact, sometimes they interbred. We know this because most people today carry some Neanderthal DNA, about 2%, but that's not much. It suggests interbreeding was rare, the exception, not the rule. Why? Maybe because most of the time, when humans saw Neanderthals, they felt that uncanny valley response, that wrongness, that instinct to avoid, to fear, to fight. The same response we feel now when we see a too realistic robot, or a CGI face that's almost right. Our brains are still doing the math they learned 50,000 years ago, still trying to tell us from them, still warning us about beings that look almost human. But Neanderthals weren't the only other humans our ancestors met. There were Denisovans in Asia. We know almost nothing about what they looked like. We found a few teeth, a finger bone, some skull fragments, but they were there, and we interbred with them too. Some populations carry Denisovan DNA. There was Homo erectus. They might have still been around when modern humans first left Africa. Tall, strong, different skull shape. They'd survived for nearly 2 million years, but they disappeared too. Around the same time we spread across the world. There was Homo Floresiensis, the hobbits, 3 feet tall, tiny brains, but they used tools, they hunted, they survived on an island in Indonesia until maybe 50,000 years ago, right when humans reached the area. All these species, all gone, all disappeared right around the time modern humans showed up in their territories. That's a pattern, and it suggests we weren't peaceful neighbours. We were the invasive species, the one that couldn't coexist, the one that took over. And if that's true, we would have needed a way to identify other human species quickly, a way to know who was competition, who was a threat, who needed to be avoided or eliminated. The Uncanny Valley gives us that. An instant emotional response to faces that are almost human but not quite. Discomfort, fear, disgust, all the emotions that create distance, that prevent bonding, that make violence easier. Think about how this would have worked. Your ancestor is out hunting. She sees figures in the distance. As they get closer, her brain is processing their faces, checking them against the template for human, for us, for safe, and something's off. The proportions are wrong. The movement is strange. The face triggers that uncanny feeling. Her body floods with stress hormones. Her brain screams danger. She raises her spear. She calls to her group. They prepare to fight or run. That response kept her alive, because those figures weren't her people. They were Neanderthals, or Denisovans, or some other human species. And they were competition for the same resources, the same territory, the same survival. The groups that survived were the ones who could make that distinction quickly, who felt that wrongness and acted on it, who didn't try to make friends with beings who looked almost human, who kept their distance, who fought when they had to. Over thousands of years, that selection pressure would have been intense. Groups that were too accepting of other human species might have interbred too much, lost their identity, or they might have been killed by groups that were less trusting, less willing to see others as human. The groups that survived were the ones with strong uncanny valley responses. The ones who felt uncomfortable around almost human faces. The ones who maintained clear boundaries. Us versus them. Human versus other. And we're the descendants of those groups. We carry their instincts, their fears, their tendency to see almost human as threatening rather than friendly. This theory explains something the disease theory doesn't. Why the uncanny valley is so tied to identity, to who counts as human and who doesn't. Because that's exactly what it evolved to determine. Are you one of us, or are you something else? It explains why the response is so emotional, so visceral. Because it's not just about avoiding disease, it's about survival in a world where other human species were real threats, where the wrong decision could get you killed. And it explains why we react so strongly to robots and AI that look almost human. Because our brains are still running that ancient program, still trying to figure out if this almost human thing is safe, still feeling that instinctive wariness around beings that cross the line between us and them. But here's where it gets really dark. This theory suggests that the uncanny valley didn't just help us avoid other human species, it helped us kill them. Because that emotional response, that disgust and fear, makes violence easier. It's harder to kill something you see as human, as one of us. Empathy gets in the way. Mirror neurons fire. You imagine their pain. You hesitate. But if they look wrong, if they trigger that uncanny response, if your brain is already categorizing them as other, as not quite human, then violence becomes easier. You're not killing a person. You're eliminating a threat, a competitor, something that doesn't quite count. This is uncomfortable to think about. But it might be true. Genocide researchers have found that dehumanization is key to mass violence. You have to make the other group seem less than human, less deserving of empathy, less real. And what if we didn't have to learn that? What if we evolved with a built-in mechanism for it? A way to look at beings that are almost human and feel they don't quite count, that they're other, that they're threats. The uncanny valley might be that mechanism, a tool our ancestors used to maintain group boundaries, to identify outsiders, to make the violence of competition and displacement emotionally possible. We see echoes of this in how the uncanny valley operates today. Studies show that people who feel stronger uncanny valley responses also tend to be more tribal, more sensitive to in-group versus out-group distinctions, more uncomfortable with people who are different. The response generalizes. It's not just about robots anymore. People apply that same feeling to anyone who seems almost but not quite like them. Different accents, different features, different behaviors, anything that triggers that sense of wrongness. This is the dark side of the uncanny valley. It's not just a quirky response to dolls and CGI. It might be a window into our violent past, a reminder that we survived by being suspicious of others, by maintaining boundaries, by being willing to see almost human as not human enough. The other human species are gone now. We're alone, the only humans left. But our brains don't know that. They're still watching for those other faces, still ready to sound the alarm when something looks almost right, but not quite. Still running a program designed for a world that doesn't exist anymore. A world where almost human meant danger, where the wrong response meant death, where survival required being able to tell us from them in a heartbeat. And maybe that's why the uncanny valley feels so primal, so impossible to overcome with logic. Because it's not about logic. It's about survival instincts that ran deeper than thought. That kept our ancestors alive in a world we can barely imagine. A world where humanity came in different forms, where almost human walked beside us, where the uncanny valley wasn't a curiosity. It was a survival tool, a way to navigate a world full of beings that were close enough to be confusing, different enough to be dangerous. We won that competition. We're the only humans left, but we carry the scars of it in our psychology, in that uncomfortable feeling when we see a face that's almost right, in that instinct to pull back, to distrust, to fear. The uncanny valley might be the ghost of our violent past, a reminder that being human wasn't always safe, that there were others who were close enough to be threatening, and that our ancestors survived by knowing the difference, by feeling that wrongness, by acting on it. Here's what makes the other human species theory really interesting. It's not just about competition. It's about something more fundamental, recognition itself. Your brain has a template for human faces, a map of what counts as one of us, and that map is incredibly specific. The distance between eyes, the ratio of forehead to jaw, the angle of cheekbones, the shape of the nose, thousands of tiny measurements your brain processes instantly. This happens below conscious thought. You look at a face and know immediately if it's human. You don't have to think about it. Your brain just knows. But what happens when something is close but wrong? That's where it gets interesting. Because your brain doesn't just say not human and move on. It gets stuck. It keeps processing, trying to fit this almost right face into the human category, failing, trying again. The mismatch creates a loop, and that loop feels deeply uncomfortable. This is what researchers call a categorical boundary violation. You're seeing something that crosses the line between categories, between human and not human, and your brain hates that. It wants clear categories, clean boundaries, this or that, not both. Think about how your brain categorizes other things. A chair is a chair, a table is a table. If you see something that's sort of a chair and sort of a table, your brain pauses, feels slightly confused, but it's not a big deal. You shrug and move on. But faces are different. Faces matter. Your survival has always depended on reading faces correctly. Knowing who's safe and who's dangerous, who's family and who's stranger, who's human and who's not. So when you see a face that violates the human category, your brain doesn't shrug. It panics. Because in our evolutionary past, that mismatch meant something important. It meant you were looking at another human species, and that's the predator detection theory, a variation on the other human species idea, but darker. Because it suggests we didn't just avoid other human species, we hunted them, and they hunted us. Think about how predator detection works in other animals. A deer sees a wolf and runs. But how does the deer know it's a wolf? It recognizes the pattern, the shape, the movement, the eyes, all the features that mean danger. But here's the thing. Predators evolved to look like non-threats, to blend in, to get close before attacking. So prey animals evolved to be suspicious of anything that's almost right but not quite. Better to run from a shadow than get eaten. This creates an evolutionary arms race. Predators get better at mimicking. Prey gets better at detecting tiny differences. The prey that survives is the one with the most sensitive detection system, the one that feels uncomfortable around almost right patterns. Now apply this to human evolution. What if other human species weren't just competition? What if they were actual predators? What if they hunted us? And what if we hunted them? We know Neanderthals were strong, Stronger than modern humans, their bones show massive muscle attachments. They could probably overpower a modern human in hand-to-hand combat. If they wanted to hunt us, they could have. We also know Neanderthals were smart. They had brains as large as ours, maybe larger. They made tools, they used fire, they coordinated hunts. They were capable of strategy, of planning, of ambush. And we know they ate meat. Lots of it. Their teeth show heavy wear from chewing tough food. Their bones show isotope signatures consistent with a high meat diet. They were carnivores, top predators. So what did they hunt? Mostly large animals, mammoths, bison, deer. But would they have hunted humans, if they were hungry enough, if they were competing for the same territory? Maybe. We don't have direct evidence, but we have evidence that humans and Neanderthals were violent toward each other. Bones with weapon marks, signs of conflict. And in a world where food was scarce and survival was hard, the line between enemy and prey gets blurry. Here's what we know about predator-prey relationships. They shape evolution powerfully. The prey species that survives is the one that can detect the predator fastest, from the greatest distance, with the least information. A gazelle that waits to see the lion clearly gets eaten. The gazelle that runs when it sees something lion-shaped in the grass survives. Even if it's wrong sometimes, even if it wastes energy running from shadows, better safe than dead. This creates a bias toward false positives, toward seeing threats that aren't there, toward feeling fear when you see patterns that are almost right, almost predator-shaped, almost dangerous. And if Neanderthals or other human species were threats to our ancestors, we would have evolved the same bias, the same tendency to feel uncomfortable around almost human faces, to see them as dangerous, to react with fear and avoidance. The uncanny valley would have been perfect for this. An instant emotional response triggered by faces that are close to human but not quite right. That wrongness signals danger. Your body floods with stress hormones. You prepare to fight or run. You don't wait to gather more information. This explains why the uncanny valley response is so fast. Faster than conscious thought. You see an almost human face and feel uncomfortable immediately, before you can analyze why, before you can talk yourself out of it. The response bypasses your rational brain entirely. That's exactly how predator detection works. It has to be fast, automatic, emotional, because thinking takes time, and time gets you killed. It also explains why the response is so hard to override. You can tell yourself the robot isn't dangerous. You can explain logically why the CGI face shouldn't bother you. Doesn't matter. You still feel it. That discomfort, that wrongness, that instinct to look away. Because it's not about logic. It's about survival reflexes burned into your brain over hundreds of thousands of years. Reflexes that kept your ancestors alive when almost human meant almost predator. Now think about what this means for how we became the only human species left. We survived because we were good at detecting threats, at recognizing other human species as dangerous, at feeling that uncanny valley response and acting on it. We were the prey that evolved the best detection system, the most sensitive alarm, the strongest response to almost human faces, and that made us better at avoiding other human species, better at keeping our distance, better at surviving. But here's the twist. Good prey often becomes good predators. The skills that help you avoid being hunted also help you hunt. The ability to detect tiny differences in faces, to read intentions from expressions, to categorize quickly into us and them. These same skills would have made us effective at hunting other human species, at identifying them from a distance, at coordinating attacks, at treating them as other rather than human. as prey rather than people. The uncanny valley works both ways. It helps you avoid predators, but it also helps you dehumanize prey, makes it easier to kill them, because they don't quite count as human. They trigger that wrongness feeling, that sense of other, that emotional distance that makes violence possible. This is uncomfortable to consider, but it fits the evidence. Modern humans spread across the world, and every other human species disappeared. We didn't coexist. We replaced them. And replacement usually isn't peaceful. The groups that survived were the ones with strong boundaries, clear categories, intense responses to almost human faces, the ones who felt the uncanny valley and trusted it, who saw other human species as threats or prey rather than potential friends. We're descended from those groups. We carry their detection systems, their biases, their tendency to feel uncomfortable around faces that cross categorical boundaries, around beings that are almost human but not quite. And those detection systems are still running, still scanning for threats that don't exist anymore, still reacting to almost human faces as if they're dangerous, as if they might be predators or prey or enemies, something to fear or fight or flee from. That's why robots bother us, why CGI faces feel wrong, why dolls with realistic features make us uncomfortable. Our brains are treating them like they treated Neanderthals, like they treated Denisovans, like they treated every other human species our ancestors encountered, as threats, as others, as beings that violate the boundary of human and therefore trigger ancient alarms, ancient fears, ancient violence. The predator detection theory suggests the uncanny valley isn't just about disease or competition. It's about life and death, about being hunted and hunting, about surviving in a world where almost human could kill you, or where you might need to kill it first. This makes the uncanny valley more than a quirk, more than an interesting psychological phenomenon. It's a scar, a mark left by our violent past, evidence that being human wasn't always safe, that there were things that looked like us but weren't us, and that our survival depended on knowing the difference instantly, on feeling their wrongness, that discomfort, that fear, and acting on it without hesitation, without mercy, without seeing those almost human faces as deserving of empathy or consideration or life. We won. We're here. We're alone. But we carry the weapons we used to win, the detection systems, the categorical boundaries, the emotional responses that made violence possible. That made survival possible. That made us the last humans standing. And every time you look at a robot and feel uncomfortable, you're feeling an echo of that ancient struggle, that ancient fear, that ancient violence. Your brain is still watching for predators that looked almost human, still ready to sound the alarm, still running programs designed for a world where the uncanny valley wasn't about technology. It was about survival, about recognizing threats, about knowing when to run and when to fight, about being the predator instead of the prey, about making sure that when one human species survived, it was us. But here's where all these theories start to break down, because they all assume the uncanny valley is about one thing, disease or death or other human species or predators. Pick your explanation. Case closed. Except your brain doesn't work that way. Your brain doesn't have one system for detecting threats. It has dozens, hundreds, all running at the same time, all feeding information into each other, all creating that final feeling you experience as the uncanny valley. Think about what happens when you see a creepy robot face. Your reaction isn't simple. It's not just fear. It's not just disgust. It's a complex mix of emotions that shift and blend. Discomfort, unease, confusion, revulsion, fascination, all at once. That complexity suggests multiple systems activating, multiple alarms going off. Your disease detection system sees the wrong skin texture. Your death recognition system notices the lack of life signals. Your social categorization system can't figure out if this is human or not. Your predator detection system flags the almost human features as potentially dangerous. All of these fire simultaneously. And they all feed into your emotional centers, creating that signature uncanny valley feeling, that sense of wrongness you can't quite name. Because it's not one thing, it's everything at once. This is called the multiple detection systems theory, and it's probably the closest we've come to understanding what's really happening. Because evolution doesn't create single-purpose tools, it creates Swiss Army knives, systems that handle multiple related problems with overlapping solutions. Your face recognition system is one of these Swiss Army knives. It evolved to solve many problems at once, identify individuals, read emotions, detect disease, recognize death, categorize human versus non-human, assess threats, all from the same input, all from looking at a face, and all of these functions share the same basic mechanism, template matching. Your brain has a model of what a healthy living human face should look like, and it compares every face you see against that model, checking dozens of features, measuring hundreds of ratios, processing thousands of tiny details. Most of the time, faces pass the check. They match the template well enough. Your brain categorizes them as human, as alive, as safe enough, and you don't feel anything strange. You just see a person. But when something is off, multiple systems notice. The skin texture is wrong. The eyes don't move right. The proportions are almost correct, but not quite. The face is too symmetrical, or not symmetrical enough, or the movement doesn't match the expression. Each mismatch triggers its own response. Each system sends its own alarm, and your brain integrates all these signals into one overwhelming feeling, the uncanny valley. That sense that something is deeply wrong even though you can't say exactly what. This explains why the uncanny valley is so hard to define, why people struggle to articulate what bothers them about certain faces, because it's not one thing. It's a cascade of small violations, each one minor, but together they create something powerful, something that feels like danger even when you know rationally there's no threat. It also explains why the uncanny valley varies between people, because these detection systems have different sensitivities in different individuals. Some people have very sensitive disease detection. They notice skin imperfections easily. They feel uncomfortable around faces with any health markers. Other people have sensitive social categorization systems. They need clear boundaries, human or not human, no middle ground. Any ambiguity triggers discomfort. They struggle with faces that cross categories. Some people grew up around death. They've seen bodies. They know what death looks like. Their death recognition system has strong templates, clear memories. They notice the absence of life signals immediately. Faces without that spark bother them intensely. And some people are just more cautious, more vigilant. Their threat detection systems run hot. They see danger in ambiguous situations. They trust their discomfort. They avoid things that feel wrong even when they can't explain why. All of this is normal variation, different calibrations of the same basic systems, and it means the uncanny valley isn't uniform, it's personal, shaped by your genetics, your experiences, your individual brain architecture. But here's what's fascinating. Despite this variation, the uncanny valley exists across cultures. Japanese researchers find it. American researchers find it. European researchers find it. Studies in Africa, Asia, South America all find the same basic pattern. People everywhere feel uncomfortable around almost human faces. The specific triggers might vary, the intensity might differ, but the phenomenon itself is universal, which suggests it's not learned, it's not cultural, it's biological, built into human brains by evolution. And that makes sense if it's serving multiple survival functions. Disease detection matters everywhere. Death recognition matters everywhere. Social categorization matters everywhere. These aren't culturally specific problems. They're human problems. Universal challenges our species has always faced. So evolution built universal solutions. Detection systems that work the same way in every human brain. With individual variation, yes. But with the same basic architecture, the same fundamental responses, the same tendency to feel uncomfortable around faces that violate the human template. This is why robots bother people in Japan and America and everywhere else. Why CGI faces create the same response across cultures. Why dolls with realistic features make children everywhere feel uneasy. We're all running the same basic software, the same detection systems, the same templates. But here's where it gets really interesting. These systems aren't static. They learn. They update their templates based on experience. And that means the uncanny valley can shift. Think about how you react to faces you see often. At first, maybe something seems off. The person's features are unusual. Their expressions are different. Their face doesn't quite match your template. You feel slightly uncomfortable. But you see them every day. You interact with them. You learn they're safe, they're friendly, they're human like you. And gradually your brain updates its template, expands the range of what counts as normal, what counts as human, what counts as safe. The discomfort fades. You stop noticing the features that seemed strange at first. Your detection. Systems recalibrate. Accept this face as part of the human category, and the uncanny valley effect disappears for this specific face. This is called perceptual narrowing. Your brain starts with broad categories, then narrows them based on experience, becomes more specific about what counts as human, what counts as normal, what counts as your group. It happens with faces you see often. It happens with faces from your own ethnic group. It happens with faces in your family. Your brain fine-tunes its templates to match your social environment, to recognize the people who matter to you, to categorize them as safe and human and us. But this creates a problem, because narrowing your template in one direction means expanding the uncanny valley in another. If your brain becomes very specific about what counts as a normal human face, then more faces fall outside that range. More faces trigger the detection systems. More faces feel wrong. This is why the uncanny valley can be stronger for faces from other ethnic groups. Not because those faces are actually wrong, but because your brain's template was trained on faces from your own group. It's calibrated to recognize those features as normal, as human, as safe. Faces with different features don't match as well. They trigger more mismatches, more alarms, more discomfort, not because they're diseased or dead or non-human, but because they're unfamiliar. Outside the narrow template your brain has learned, this is uncomfortable to acknowledge, but it's important, because it means the uncanny valley can contribute to prejudice, to seeing people from other groups as less human, as other, as triggering the same discomfort as robots or corpses or threats. Your detection systems can't tell the difference between actual threats and unfamiliar faces. They just respond to mismatches, to violations of the template, and if your template is narrow, then lots of real human faces will violate it, will trigger those ancient alarms, will feel wrong. But here's the hopeful part. Templates can be updated, broadened, made more inclusive, through exposure, through interaction, through learning that these unfamiliar faces belong to real humans who are safe and friendly and deserving of empathy. The more diverse faces you see, the broader your template becomes. The wider your range of normal, the fewer faces trigger the uncanny valley response. Your brain learns that human faces come in many forms, that the category is bigger than you thought. That difference doesn't mean danger. This happens naturally in diverse environments. Cities with many ethnic groups, workplaces with international teams, schools with students from everywhere. People in these environments have broader templates, more flexible categories, less intense uncanny valley responses to unfamiliar faces. They've trained their detection systems to accept more variation, to see humanity in more forms, to feel comfortable with difference, not because they're morally superior, but because their brains have had more data, more examples, more opportunities to update the template. This suggests the uncanny valley isn't fixed. It's not a permanent feature of human psychology. It's plastic, changeable, responsive to experience, which means we can reduce it, broaden it, make it less likely to cause problems, not by ignoring it, not by pretending it doesn't exist, but by understanding what it is. Multiple detection systems running ancient programs, checking faces against templates, trying to keep us safe from threats that mostly don't exist anymore, and by deliberately expanding those templates, exposing ourselves to diverse faces, learning to see humanity in forms that don't match our narrow expectations, training our brains to accept more variation, to feel comfortable with more difference. This won't eliminate the uncanny valley completely. You'll still feel uncomfortable around robots, around CGI faces, around dolls with dead eyes, because those actually do violate the human template in meaningful ways. They lack life signals, they have wrong proportions, they move incorrectly. Your detection systems are right to flag them. They're not human, they're not alive, and your ancient alarms are doing their job, keeping you aware, keeping you cautious, keeping you from treating non-living things as if they have human minds and human intentions. But it might help you feel less uncomfortable around real human faces that are just unfamiliar. Faces from other groups, faces with unusual features, faces that your narrow template wants to reject but your conscious mind knows are fully human. Because that's the key insight from the multiple detection systems theory. The uncanny valley isn't one thing, it's many things, and some of those things are useful. They protect you from disease, they help you recognize death, they keep you aware of threats. But some of those things are bugs, misfires, ancient programs running in modern contexts where they cause more harm than good, where they make you uncomfortable around people who deserve your empathy, where they narrow your definition of human instead of broadening it. Understanding the difference matters, knowing which responses to trust and which to question, which discomfort signals real danger and which signals only unfamiliarity, which faces deserve caution and which deserve curiosity. Your brain is trying to keep you safe. It's running programs designed for a world that doesn't exist anymore, a world where disease killed quickly, where death was everywhere, where other human species were real threats, where almost human meant actual danger. Those programs saved your ancestors, got them through challenges you can't imagine, kept them alive long enough to have children, to pass on their genes, to create you. But that world is gone, and now you're left with detection systems that fire at robots and dolls and CGI faces that make you uncomfortable, around the almost human. that create that signature feeling of wrongness when faces don't quite match the template. Multiple systems, multiple functions, multiple reasons for that one strange feeling. The uncanny valley isn't simple, it's complex, layered, built from many evolutionary solutions to many ancient problems. And understanding that complexity helps, because it means you can work with these systems instead of against them, can train them, update them, broaden them, can keep the useful parts and question the bugs, can recognize when your discomfort is protecting you and when it's just noise, when to trust the ancient alarms and when to override them with conscious thought, when to listen to your detection systems as when to tell them they're wrong. That's the power of understanding, of knowing why you feel what you feel, of recognizing the evolutionary programs running beneath your conscious awareness. You can't turn them off, but you can learn to work with them, to interpret their signals, to make better choices about when to act on them. The uncanny valley isn't going away. It's built into your brain, but it doesn't have to control you, doesn't have to narrow your world, doesn't have to make you afraid of difference or uncomfortable with the unfamiliar. Because now you know what it is. Multiple ancient detection systems, all trying to keep you safe, all checking faces against templates, all creating that feeling of wrongness when something doesn't match. Okay. So now let's actually dig into what happens inside your brain during an uncanny valley moment. Not what you feel, but what's going on under the hood. This is where things get weird, and honestly, it's the stuff that makes brain science feel like science fiction. Let's start with your face recognition system. It's not just one part of your brain, but a whole network. Scientists call the main area the fusiform face area. You don't need to remember the name, just know. It's a patch on the side of your brain, about the size of your thumbnail. This part fires up every time you see a face, any face, real or fake, cartoon or doll, even a face made from clouds or toast. But here's the strange part. Your brain processes faces differently from everything else. If you see a chair or a tree, you break it down into parts. Legs, branches, leaves. But with faces, your brain tries to see the whole thing at once. It's almost like your mind takes a snapshot, compares it instantly to every face it's seen before, and decides in a split second. Safe, not safe. Familiar, not familiar. This is why even babies stare at faces more than anything else. There's research where newborns, just a few hours old, will turn their eyes to face-like shapes. 2 dots for eyes, a line for a mouth. That's all it takes. Their brains are already tuned for faces before they really know what a face is. But this system is very sensitive. It's looking for tiny details, the distance between the eyes, the size of the mouth, the way the skin reflects light. When everything lines up, you get a green light. Safe, human, nothing weird here. But when something's off, even a little bit, alarms start to go off. And it's not just one alarm. As we saw, multiple systems are checking at once. Some of these are old, deep in your brain. One is the amygdala. That's your fear center. It's tiny, shaped like an almond, buried deep inside. If you see something that might be dangerous, your amygdala lights up. It doesn't wait for you to think it through. It just reacts. Scientists have put people in brain scanners and shown them all kinds of faces. Normal faces, cartoon faces, realistic robots, corpses, masks, everything. The amygdala fires more when the face is almost human but not quite right. It doesn't care if it's a robot or a computer graphic. The reaction is the same. Discomfort, maybe fear. It gets weirder. Other parts of your brain also join in. The insula is important for disgust. It helps you notice when something looks sick, gross, or just wrong. This part also fires up when people see uncanny faces. It's the same spot that activates when you smell rotten food or see a wound. So, your brain is linking off faces with danger from sickness or even death. And then there's the anterior cingulate cortex. Don't worry about the name. Just know it's like a warning system. It tells you when something unexpected happens. A surprise, a weird movement, a face that blinks a little too slowly. It tries to help you focus on things that don't quite fit, so you can figure out if there's a threat. So you're not just using one part of your brain, you're running a whole team. Each part is doing its own job. One checks for danger, one checks for sickness, one checks for social signals. All these signals get sent to your conscious mind, and you just feel it as wrongness. That's the uncanny valley, your brain's committee vote saying, something's weird, maybe be careful. Let's look at one famous experiment. In Japan, scientists showed people faces that range from cartoonish to very realistic. They mixed up the features, real eyes on a cartoon face, or a plastic skin on a real person's face. People rated the most realistic but not quite faces as the creepiest. What's cool is that while people were doing this, their brain activity changed. The more off the face, the more the amygdala and insula fired. Brain scans lit up in the exact places you'd expect from fear and disgust. Another study used robots, not the cute kind but ones with human-like skin, blinking eyes, moving lips. When the faces were clearly robot, people were fine. When they were completely human, people were fine. But right in the middle, when the robot looked almost human but not quite, people got uncomfortable. Their skin conductance went up, which means their bodies were reacting too. Sweaty, palms, raised heart rate. Their brains were saying, this is weird, stay alert. Here's another layer. There's something called prediction error. Your brain is always making guesses about what will happen next. If you see a human face, you expect it to move a certain way. Smile at the right time, blink smoothly. If a face blinks too slowly, or the smile doesn't reach the eyes, your prediction fails. That's a red flag. Your brain hates when its guesses are wrong, especially about faces. That's why animation studios spend millions trying to make computer faces look real. But even tiny mistakes, eyes that don't focus, lips that move out of sync, throw you off. Pixar learned this the hard way. Early computer-animated movies like The Polar Express got complaints that the characters looked creepy. Not because they were ugly, but because their movements were almost real, but not quite. The more realistic the animation, the more your brain expects perfection. Any mistake stands out. Now let's talk about how your brain handles bodies, not just faces. There's another network, mirror neurons. These are brain cells that fire when you see someone move, and when you move in the same way. It's how you feel what someone else is feeling. If you see a face wince in pain, you might flinch too. If someone laughs, you smile back. But if a robot or CGI character moves in a way that's almost right, but stiff or jerky, your mirror neurons get confused. They want to empathize but can't. That gap between wanting to connect and not being able to makes you uncomfortable. It's like trying to shake hands with someone who misses your hand every time. The movement is close, but not close enough. There's even evidence from people with brain injuries. Some people lose the ability to recognize faces, a condition called prosopagnosia, or face blindness. These people don't get the uncanny valley response. They don't feel weird about dolls or masks or robot faces. Their detection systems aren't firing. This shows that the uncanny valley isn't just about culture or learning. It's something hardwired in the visual parts of your brain. You can see this in people with autism too. Some studies show that people on the autism spectrum have different uncanny valley responses. Some are less bothered by almost human faces, others are more sensitive to small details. This means the detection system isn't the same for everyone, but the basic wiring is there. It's just tuned differently. Let's zoom out to animals for a moment. Do other creatures have anything like the uncanny valley? It's a fun question. There's a study from Kyoto University with monkeys. Scientists showed monkeys pictures of monkey faces, computer-generated monkey faces, and uncanny monkey faces that were almost real but not quite. The monkeys looked longer at the weird faces. They seemed cautious, maybe confused. It's not proof that monkeys feel exactly what we feel, but it hints that the roots of this system go deep in the animal family tree. Now, let's dive into why these detection systems are so tightly wired into you. Your ancestors had to make snap decisions. If you saw someone with skin that looked wrong, or eyes that didn't move right, you had to act fast. Maybe they were sick. Maybe they were dead. Maybe they were not part of your group. A second's delay could mean danger. Your brain evolved to be quick, not perfect. Over time, this quick system got more complicated. It started to handle more information. Not just, is this a person? But, is this person sick, dead, a friend, a foe? And all those answers had to come fast, before you even thought about it. This is why the uncanny valley is so stubborn. It's not a learned habit you can just shake off. It's built into the oldest parts of your brain, the parts that don't argue or reason, the parts that just react. And here's something wild. You can't always override it. You might know a robot isn't dangerous. You might know a doll isn't alive. But your body still reacts. Your heart races. You feel uncomfortable. You might even get goosebumps. That's your brain's ancient software running in the background, whether you want it to or not. Let's look at how this plays out in real life. In Japan, there's a robot called Geminoid. It's designed to look exactly like its creator, a middle-aged man with a beard, glasses, and soft skin. When people first meet the robot, they often flinch. Some laugh nervously, some can't look it in the eyes. But after spending time with the robot, the discomfort fades. Their brains get used to it. The detection systems calm down. But the first reaction is always the same. Unease, confusion, a sense of this isn't right. Now think about dolls. Not cartoon dolls, but the super realistic ones you see in some horror movies, or even ventriloquist dummies. There's a reason they show up in scary stories. Their faces look human, but the eyes don't move. The mouth opens and closes with a click. Your brain wants to categorize them as alive, but they don't move like living things. That mismatch sets off the alarms. CGI movies have their own problems. In movies like Beowulf or Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within, the characters look almost real. But viewers complain about dead eyes. The faces are smooth, the skin is perfect, but the eyes don't have the sparkle of life. Your brain notices. You can't explain it, but you feel it. Here's a detail you might not expect. Lighting matters. In one study, researchers changed the lighting on computer faces. Harsh shadows made faces look less real. Soft and natural light made them seem more human. But if the lighting was almost right but not quite, the faces looked even stranger. It's not just the face itself, but the whole context your brain is judging. And sound matters too. If voice doesn't match the face, or the timing is off by just a fraction of a second, your brain notices. It's like a ventriloquist act that doesn't quite work. The lips move at the wrong time. You feel uncomfortable even if you don't know why. Let's bring in some numbers. In one big study, Scientists asked hundreds of people to rate faces on a scale from not human to totally human. They found a steep dip in the middle, the uncanny valley. Most people were fine with cartoon faces, score near 0, or real faces, score near 100. But faces that scored around 60 to 80 were rated as the creepiest. That's the uncanny valley in numbers, a sharp drop, then a sharp rise. Another number, in MRI studies, the amygdala lights up about 30% more when people see uncanny faces compared to ordinary ones. That's a big jump, especially for a part of the brain that reacts in milliseconds. Now think about this. Your brain is making all these calculations without your permission. You walk into a room. You see a mannequin in the corner. For a split second, your brain thinks, person. Then it checks the details. No movement, no breathing. Skin looks strange. Your detection systems slam on the brakes. Wait, not a person. Something's off. You feel a jolt of discomfort. That's the uncanny valley at work. And it's not just faces and bodies, even voices can trigger it. Ever hear a computer-generated voice that's almost right, but not quite? Maybe it's too flat, or the timing is weird, or the emotion feels fake. Your brain notices. You feel uncomfortable. It's the same detection systems, just using sound instead of sight. This is why some people hate talking to voice assistants or automated phone systems. The voice is almost human, but the pacing, the tone, or the pauses are off. Your brain wants it to be real, but it knows it's not. That mismatch triggers the same wrongness feeling. Let's look at how this works with masks. In some traditional ceremonies, masks are used to hide the face, exaggerate features, or create an almost human look. Some masks are meant to be scary. They have real human features, but the eyes are too big, or the mouth is twisted. People everywhere report feeling uneasy around these masks. It's not just culture. It's brains reacting to faces that don't quite match the template. Even in ancient art you see this. Old statues sometimes look creepy because the faces are almost lifelike, but don't have the spark of real people. The eyes are blank, the skin looks waxy. People describe these statues as haunting or unsettling. It's the uncanny valley, thousands of years before robots or CGI. There's also a modern version of this, Deepfakes. These are computer-generated videos where someone's face is put onto another person's body. Sometimes they're almost perfect, but often there's a tiny mismatch. The mouth moves wrong, or the eyes don't track, right? When people spot these errors, they feel a rush of discomfort. The detection systems are doing their job, flagging something as off. Here's something interesting. Not everyone feels the uncanny valley at the same strength, even in the same situation. Some people are more sensitive to motion, others to texture or lighting. If you're an artist or you work with faces, you might spot tiny errors that others miss. If you're less tuned to faces, you might not feel anything at all. That's normal. It's just the way your brain's wired. There's one last piece of evidence worth mentioning. Sometimes the uncanny valley can be triggered by medical conditions. For example, people with facial paralysis or certain injuries might look almost like everyone else, but their expressions don't move the way your brain expects. Most people don't mean to judge, but their detection systems still react. This creates a tough situation, reacting to something that isn't a threat, just different. It's a reminder that your brain's alarms aren't always right, and sometimes they need to be questioned. So, what does all this evidence show? The uncanny valley isn't just a weird feeling. It's a real, measurable reaction built into your brain. It's a network of systems, vision, emotion, movement, prediction, all working together to keep you safe. Sometimes they get it right, warning you about real dangers. Sometimes they get it wrong, making you uncomfortable for no good reason. And that's the puzzle. Your brain's job is to keep you alive, not comfortable. It evolved to react fast, judge quickly, and flag anything that might be dangerous or just different. In the ancient world, that kept your ancestors safe. In the modern world, it makes you flinch at robots, dolls, deepfakes, and masks. But knowledge helps. The more you understand about these systems, the less power they have over you. You can recognize the feeling for what it is. A signal from deep inside your brain, shaped by millions of years of survival. You don't have to obey it, but you can't ignore it completely. It's part of what makes you human. Now let's see how all of this plays out in the modern world, where we encounter uncanny things our ancestors never imagined. Imagine walking into a quiet lab in Japan. There's a robot sitting in a chair. At first glance, it looks just like a person. It's got soft skin, real hair, even tiny wrinkles. If you didn't know better, you'd think it was just another scientist taking a break. But then it blinks, and the movement is just a little too slow. Its eyes shift, but not quite the way real eyes do. People who meet this robot, called Geminoid, almost always react the same way. They get tense. Some step back, some giggle nervously or look away. Their bodies are on alert even though they know it's just a machine. This kind of robot isn't science fiction anymore. All over the world, engineers are building robots that look and act almost human. They're called androids. They can move their arms, turn their heads, and even talk in a soft human voice. In Japan, you'll see them working in museums, welcoming people at hotels, or even acting on stage in plays. In South Korea, there's a robot news anchor. In China, there are robot greeters at airports. The goal is always the same: make robots that can fit in with people, not just as tools, but as friends, helpers, or even co-workers. But it turns out this is really hard to get right. The closer robots get to looking and acting like real people, the more our brains expect perfection. We notice every tiny mistake. If the mouth moves just a bit out of sync with the words or the eyebrows lift at the wrong time, it feels strange. It's not just about how the robot looks, but how it moves, talks, and even how it stands still. Let's look at a real example. In 2016, a Japanese company introduced a robot named Erica. She was supposed to be the most beautiful and human-like android in the world. Erica could nod, blink, turn her head, and hold a conversation using artificial intelligence. Her creators wanted her to work as a receptionist, even as a TV announcer. On video, she looks almost real. Her skin is smooth, her hair is shiny, her voice is calm. But when you watch closely, you see what's missing. Her smile doesn't quite match her words. Her eyes sometimes drift or stare a little too long. The pauses between sentences are just a bit too slow. Most people who meet Erica up close say the same thing. It's amazing, but it's also eerie. Some people even say, it was like talking to a ghost. Here's the thing. Our brains are great at picking up tiny signs of life. Real faces have tiny muscle twitches, little movements around the eyes and mouth. Even when someone is still, their breathing moves their skin just a bit. Real people shift their weight, scratch their nose, glance away. Robots can fake most of these, but not all. When something is missing, your brain notices. Even if you can't say what's wrong, you feel it. Now think about robots that don't try to look human at all. The Roomba robot vacuum, for example, or those little robots that carry food to your table in some restaurants. They roll around, beep, maybe flash lights or play music. Nobody feels creeped out by them. They're cute. They're just robots. Your brain doesn't expect them to act like people. so it doesn't get bothered when they don't. But as soon as a robot starts to cross that line, when it has a face or hands or tries to talk like a person, your brain's detection system turns on. You start scanning for mistakes. You want it to be alive, but you know it's not. That's the uncanny valley. Let's zoom in on one experiment from Germany. Scientists brought people into a lab and showed them three things: a real human hand, a robot hand made of metal, and a fake hand, covered in soft skin, shaped to look almost human but not quite. The fake hand even had little hairs and veins. People were asked to touch or look at the hands. The metal hand was interesting, but nobody minded it. The real hand was, of course, fine. But the fake, almost human hand? That one made people uncomfortable. Some people pulled back. Some reported a cold, uneasy feeling. Their skin conductance went up. Their bodies were reacting just like in the face experiments. Another study looked at robots and empathy. Researchers wanted to see if people would care about a robot in trouble. They set up a scene where a robot dog tried to walk up a ramp. Sometimes it made it, sometimes it fell. When the robot looked cartoony, people laughed or cheered. But when the dog was designed to look and move, almost like a real puppy, people got uneasy if it fell. Some even said they felt guilty or sad. But if the movements were just a little off, legs bending the wrong way or the face not reacting, people felt more disturbed than sad. The almost realness was worse than a simple toy or a real animal. It was as if your brain didn't know which box to put it in: friend, tool, pet, or something else. Here's another example from everyday life. In some hospitals, engineers are testing robots as caregivers for the elderly. These robots are supposed to help with simple tasks, bringing medicine, reminding people to eat, or just keeping them company. Some robots look like cartoon animals with big eyes and soft fur, like the famous Paro seal robot. People love these. They pet them, talk to them, even name them. But when companies tried to make robots that looked and acted like real nurses, things got tricky. Patients said things like, "It's too real, but not real enough." Some older people even refused to talk to the robots, saying they felt watched or judged. The robots' faces smiled, but the eyes didn't move quite right. The voices were too calm or too slow. Instead of comfort, they brought discomfort. Let's go back to Japan for a moment. In 2015, a shopping mall installed a robot greeter named Aiko Chihira. She wore a pink kimono, bowed politely, and welcomed shoppers in a soft, sweet voice. From a distance, she looked like a real woman, but up close her hands moved stiffly. Her smile was frozen. Some shoppers were impressed, but many avoided her. Some said, "I felt like she was staring right through me." After a few months, the mall took her away. The feedback was simple. Too many people felt uneasy. Even in the world of entertainment, the uncanny valley trips up designers. In 2016, Disney built a robot called Stuntronics. These robots could swing, flip, and fly like superheroes, but Disney made sure not to give them real faces. They wore masks or had simple cartoon features. Anytime they tried to make the faces more real, test audiences said the robots looked creepy or haunted. So the designers kept the faces simple: big eyes, cartoon smiles, or masks. That way nobody expected them to be fully human. There's a lesson here. When robots look clearly non-human, our brains accept them. When robots look exactly human, we can accept them too, at least for a moment. But when they're almost there, but not quite, that's when things get uncomfortable. Let's talk numbers. In a 2018 survey, Researchers asked 1,000 people in the United States how they felt about different types of robots. About 70% said they liked robots that looked like machines. Only 18% liked robots with human faces. The rest said human-like robots made them feel uneasy or nervous. That's a big gap. The same survey found that people trusted non-human robots to do simple jobs, like cleaning or delivering packages, but didn't want them as teachers, babysitters, or nurses. The trust dropped even lower when the robots looked too human. Here's another stat. In South Korea, a company made a robot, teacher for young kids. It had a plastic face, big blinking eyes, and a soft smile. At first, the kids loved it, but as the robot started using more human-like voices and movements, some kids lost interest. A few even said they felt watched or spied on. The company had to adjust the robot's design, making the face more cartoonish and the voice more playful. After that, the kids were happy again. Now let's look at a different kind of robot, a virtual one. Think about digital assistants, like the ones on your phone or computer. Most of them have simple cartoon-like faces or just a glowing circle. But as companies try to make digital assistants more lifelike, problems show up. In one test, a company gave its assistant a photorealistic human face and voice. Testers said it was weird and unsettling. They couldn't relax talking to it. The company went back to a simpler look, a cute little blob with a smile. Why does this keep happening? Here's what. The evidence shows. The more human a robot looks or sounds, the more we expect it to act exactly like a real person. Every tiny mistake stands out. If the eyes don't track your face, or the voice pauses at the wrong time, your brain flags it. It's not just about looks. It's about timing, movement, even tiny sounds. And it's not only adults who notice. In 2019, a group of scientists in the UK did an experiment with children. They showed the kids videos of robots with different faces, some cartoonish, some realistic. The kids liked the cartoon robots, but the realistic ones made them nervous. Some kids covered their eyes or asked to turn off the video. Even young brains are wired to spot the almost human but not quite right feeling. Let's look at another real-world example. Robot pets for people with dementia. Studies in the US and Europe show that simple robot animals like cats or dogs with soft fur and simple faces make people happy. They pet them, talk to them, sometimes believe they're real. But when companies tried to make robot pets that look too realistic, things changed. People got confused or upset. Some thought the animals were sick or dying because their movements weren't quite right. The lesson? Simple is better. Too much realism can break the spell. The same pattern shows up in airports, hotels, and stores. In 2021, a hotel in China hired a robot concierge with a human face. It could answer questions, book rooms, even tell jokes. But guests said the robot felt cold, or looked at me funny. Some guests avoided the robot altogether. The hotel replaced it with a robot shaped like a panda. Suddenly, people smiled, took selfies, and even hugged the robot. There's even a story from the US military. The army once tested a robot named Bear. It was supposed to rescue wounded soldiers. The first version had a human-like face. Soldiers testing it said it was creepy and disturbing. Some refused to let the robot pick them up, even in training. The designers switched to a simple, friendly bear face. After that, the soldiers were fine with it. So, what does all this mean? It shows that the uncanny valley isn't just a theory. It's something that affects how we build, use, and accept new technology. Engineers and designers have to walk a fine line. If they want people to trust robots, they have to make them friendly, but not too real. They have to choose the right face, the right voice, the right movements. There's even a name for this in the tech world: designing for acceptance. Companies now hire psychologists and artists to study how faces, voices and movements affect people's feelings. Hospitals, schools and hotels test robot designs again and again. They use focus groups and surveys to see what works. The goal isn't just to make robots smarter, but to make them comfortable to be around. Here's something interesting. In some places, people are starting to get used to human-like robots. In Tokyo, there's a coffee shop where a robot named Pepper takes orders and chats with customers. Pepper has a big head, wide eyes, and a soft voice. It doesn't try to look 100% human, just friendly. People say they like Pepper. Some even visit the cafe just to see the robot. In other places, people aren't ready yet. In Germany, a train station tried using a robot guide with a realistic face. Passengers avoided it. Some even said it made them feel watched or judged. The station switched to a robot shaped like a cartoon dog. Suddenly, people were happy to ask for directions. The uncanny valley isn't just about fear, it's about trust. We want to feel safe around new technology. If a robot looks too much like a person but acts weird, our brains say, be careful. If it looks like a cartoon or a friendly animal, our guard goes down. Some companies are trying to solve the problem with better technology. They use high-speed cameras and sensors to track eye movement, muscle twitches, even micro-expressions. They call it effective computing, teaching robots to show feelings the way people do. But even with all this tech, the smallest mistake can ruin the illusion. One missed blink, one twitch in the wrong place, and the uncanny valley opens up again. And here's a twist. Some people actually like the uncanny feeling. There's a group of fans who collect hyper-realistic dolls, robots, or mannequins. They say it's fun to feel a little creeped out. For them, the uncanny valley is a thrill, not a problem. But for most people, it's still a barrier. Let's end with one more story. In 2020, a company in the US made a robot called Sophia. She can talk, make jokes, even hold a conversation. She's been on TV shows, met world leaders, and even got citizenship in Saudi Arabia. But if you watch interviews, you'll see the familiar pattern. People are impressed but also uneasy. Some reporters shift in their seats or laugh nervously. Sophia's face moves almost like a real person, but not quite. Her eyes don't always match her words. Her smile is slow, almost delayed. The effect is fascinating, but also a little strange. So far, no robot has crossed the uncanny valley completely. Each new version gets closer, but there's always something that gives it away. Maybe that's just the way our brains are built. Maybe it's a problem that can never be fully solved. Or maybe, as more people get used to robots, the feeling will fade over time. But right now, in labs, hospitals, airports, and even coffee shops, the uncanny valley is very real. It shapes the way we meet new technology. It affects what we trust, what we avoid, what we welcome into our lives. And as robots get better, the line keeps moving. What creeped people out 10 years ago might be normal today. A robot that feels strange in one country might be popular in another. Our brains are always adapting, but the uncanny valley still waits for anything that's almost, but not quite, real. Let's take a look at another place where the uncanny valley shows up. A place where faces, movement, and emotion are everything. Hollywood has been fighting this battle for decades, and the results are sometimes just as strange as anything in the lab. Let's step out of the lab for a minute and walk into a movie theatre. The lights dim, the screen glows, You're about to watch a big, expensive new film. There's a hero, a villain, and some amazing action scenes. But there's something else too. Something that makes your skin crawl even if you can't put your finger on it. The faces on the screen look real, almost. Their eyes move, their lips stretch into smiles, but something feels off. You try to ignore it, but it stays in your mind. It's that old, strange feeling again, the uncanny valley. Hollywood has been running into this problem for a long time. Sometimes it's in animated movies, sometimes in special effects. The goal is always the same: make fake people look and move like real ones. But when they get close, so close you almost believe it, your brain picks up on the cracks. Let's go back to 2001. That year, a studio called Square Pictures took a huge risk. They made a movie called Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. It was the first full-length movie with totally computer-generated humans. Not cartoons, humans. The main character, Dr. Aki Ross, had skin with pores, shiny lips, and flowing hair. Every strand was carefully animated. The actors' voices were real, but everything else was digital. When the movie came out, people were amazed at first. The characters looked almost real. You could see reflections in their eyes, and even tiny movements in their faces. But then, as the film went on, something felt wrong. The faces were too smooth. The eyes were glassy. The mouths moved in ways that didn't match the words. Some people said the actors seemed like zombies or plastic dolls. Others said they felt nothing for the characters, no matter what happened to them. The story was meant to be emotional, but the fake faces got in the way. The movie didn't do well at the box office. Critics and fans both said the same thing. It looks amazing, but it's creepy. The technology was ahead of its time, but the feeling was off. The uncanny valley had swallowed the film. Now let's look at another big movie, The Polar Express, which came out in 2004. Directed by Robert Zemeckis, this was a Christmas movie based on a beloved children's book. The studio used motion capture technology. Real actors wore special suits with sensors. Every movement was recorded and turned into a digital character. Tom Hanks played several roles, including the main boy, the conductor, and even Santa. On paper, it sounded perfect. Real people's movements, real voices, but totally animated faces. When the movie came out, it was a hit, with some families. The train, the snow, the North Pole, everything looked magical. But the faces, that's where things got weird. The children's eyes seemed too wide. Their skin didn't move quite right. Smiles were slow to appear. Some kids in the audience were enchanted, but others felt uneasy. Adults noticed it too. Reviews called the faces dead-eyed or hollow. Some people said the characters looked like wax figures or robots pretending to be people. The movie made money, but the uncanny valley became a running joke. Even today, people talk about the Polar Express stare. Why did this happen? The technology could capture every movement, but not the tiny details that make a face feel alive. In real life, eyes dart around, eyelids twitch, cheeks move when we talk. In the movie, everything was close, but not quite there. The result was a little unsettling, even if you couldn't say why. Robert Zemeckis tried again with Beowulf in 2007 and A Christmas Carol in 2009. Both used the same motion capture technology. Both had famous actors, strong stories, and stunning action scenes. But the faces still weren't right. Critics called them lifeless or creepy. Audiences noticed that the characters' mouths moved in weird ways, or that their eyes didn't follow the action. Even though the movies were full of colour and action, the faces kept people at arm's length. They couldn't connect with the characters. Let's look at another example. In 2011, the movie Mars Needs Mums came out. The studio spent $150 million making it. They used the latest motion capture and animation tools. The story was about a boy whose mum gets taken to Mars. He has to save her. Simple, right? But when people watched the movie, they felt uneasy. The faces were off. The eyes were too big. The skin was too smooth. Nobody could relate to the characters. The movie ended up being one of the biggest box office flops ever. Studios learned a hard lesson. Just because you can make fake humans doesn't mean people want to watch them. Not every movie fell into the uncanny valley, though. Around the same time, Pixar and DreamWorks made animated films like Toy Story, Shrek, and Finding Nemo. The characters in these movies didn't look human at all. They had big round heads, huge eyes, and funny bodies. Nobody expected them to be real. The audience loved them. The lesson was clear. If you make your characters cartoonish, people are happy to accept them. If you try to make them too real, you risk falling into the valley. Here's something interesting. In 2010, a research group in California did an experiment. They showed people short clips of faces, some real, some computer-generated, some in between. The researchers measured people's reactions, including heart rates and facial muscles. The closer the fake faces got to looking human, the more people felt uncomfortable. But when the faces were clearly fake or clearly real, people relaxed. There was a sweet spot where things felt okay. But once you crossed a certain line, almost real, but not quite, people's brains hit the alarm. And it's not just about faces. Hands, movement, even the way a character blinks can set off the feeling. In another study, people watched animated hands pick up objects. Simple cartoon hands were fine. Real hands were fine. But hands that looked almost real, but moved just a little too stiffly, made people uneasy. Your brain is an expert at spotting life. Even the smallest mistake stands out. Let's talk about another moment in movie history. Tron: Legacy, released in 2010. In this film, Jeff Bridges plays two characters, his older self and a digital version of his younger self. The younger version was made with computers. The digital face was mapped onto a real actor's body. When people saw the movie, some were amazed, others felt strange. The younger Jeff Bridges looked almost perfect, but his mouth and eyes didn't match the voice sometimes. There was a stiffness in his smile. Some fans called it Jeff Bridges' robot twin. The effect was impressive, but not quite right. In 2016, Rogue One, a Star Wars story, tried something even bolder. The filmmakers brought back a character named Grand Moff Tarkin, played by Peter Cushing, who had died in 1994. They used an actor with a similar build and mapped Cushing's face onto him using computers. For many viewers it was a shock. Some thought it was amazing, a little bit of movie magic. Others said it was distracting. The face looked almost real, but the eyes didn't move naturally. The mouth was just a bit off. People described the character as haunting or ghostly. The effect was so close to real, but not close enough. And then, in 2019, The Irishman used digital effects to make actors look younger. Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, and Joe Pesci all had their faces digitally changed in almost every scene. The technology was better than ever, but even so, some people noticed strange moments. Sometimes the faces looked too smooth. Sometimes the eyes didn't match the age of the voice. The actors' bodies moved like older men, while their faces looked young. The tiny mismatch was enough to take people out of the story. Here's a different angle: video games. As graphics get better, game designers try to make characters look more real. In 2007, a game called Mass Effect became famous for its story and characters. But there was a problem. The faces looked human, but the eyes often stared straight ahead, never blinking at the right time. Smiles didn't reach the eyes. Players joked about the dead stare. Later games improved, but the uncanny valley still pops up when graphics push toward realism. Same goes for sports games. Newer versions of soccer or basketball games have athletes that look almost identical to real players. But if the mouth moves wrong during an interview, or the eyes don't track the ball just right, fans notice. The closer the game gets to reality, the more any little slip stands out. Let's get back to movies for a moment. Sometimes filmmakers try to avoid the uncanny valley on purpose. In Avatar, James Cameron created blue-skinned aliens called the Na'vi. Their faces are almost human, but not quite. Eyes are bigger, ears are pointed, skin is striped. By making them different enough, the director avoided the problem. People said the characters looked alive and believable, even though they weren't human. It was a smart move. Disney and Pixar do this too. In Frozen, Moana, and Inside Out, the characters have round faces, huge eyes, and cartoon bodies. Nobody expects them to be real, so nobody feels uneasy. These movies make billions of dollars and win awards. The uncanny valley isn't a problem if you stay far away from it, but sometimes, even, tiny choices can make a difference. Think of the 2019 movie Cats. The actors wore special suits, and computers added fur, tails, and cat faces. The goal was to make real people look like singing, dancing cats. The result? Most people were creeped out. The faces were too human, but covered in digital fur. The ears twitched, but the eyes looked like people's eyes. Some called it nightmare fuel. Even the actors said the effect was strange. The movie became famous for all the wrong reasons. Why do these things happen? Why does our brain react so strongly? Scientists think it's because we're wired to notice life. For thousands of years, humans have had to tell the difference between real faces and fake ones. It's part of survival. If something looks alive but doesn't act right, your brain says, be careful. Maybe it's sick. Maybe it's a threat. Maybe it's something you don't understand. You feel uneasy, even if you don't know why. Here's another way to think about it. Imagine you're walking in the woods. You see a shape in the distance. It looks like a person, but then it moves in a way people don't move. Your brain gets ready to run or fight. That same system kicks in when you see a face on screen that's almost, but not quite, right. It's a survival instinct. Some researchers think the uncanny valley is tied to how we learn to spot danger. In the past, people had to avoid sick or dead bodies to stay healthy. A body that looks alive but doesn't move right could be a warning sign. That feeling might have stuck with us, even as the world changed. Now it shows up in the movies, video games, and even virtual reality. Not everyone feels the uncanny valley the same way. Some people are more sensitive, some less. In one study, scientists found that people who are good at reading emotions on faces are more likely to get creeped out by almost real characters. People who watch a lot of animated movies or play games might get used to it, but most still notice when something is off. What about the future? Technology keeps getting better. Every year, computers can make more realistic faces, smoother movements, and better voices. Some experts say we'll cross the uncanny valley soon. Others think it will always be there, just out of reach. Even if robots and digital people get perfect on the outside, there might always be something missing inside, a spark of life that can't be faked. Here's a twist. Sometimes, movies use the uncanny valley on purpose. In horror films, directors will make a doll or a puppet look almost real, but not quite. Think of movies like Annabelle or Child's Play. The dolls' faces are close to human, but the eyes are glassy and the smiles are too wide. The effect is scary on purpose. Filmmakers know the uncanny valley makes people uncomfortable, so they use it to build fear. In science fiction, the uncanny valley can be used to tell a story. A robot that looks almost human but acts strange can be a symbol for something deeper. Maybe it's about what it means to be alive. Maybe it's about the line between real and fake. Movies like Blade Runner, Ex Machina, and AI, artificial intelligence, use almost real characters to ask big questions about life, trust, and what makes us human. Let's step back and look at the big picture. The uncanny valley isn't just a problem for robots or movies. It's a window into how our minds work. Our brains want to connect with other people. We look for signs of life, eyes that move, smiles that match words, tiny twitches and breaths. When we see something that's close, but not all the way there, it feels wrong. It's not just about looks, it's about movement, sound, and even timing. In the world of special effects, designers try to fix the problem in different ways. Sometimes they go for total realism and accept the risk. Sometimes they pull back and make things more cartoonish. Sometimes they add little flaws, tiny scars, freckles, or uneven teeth, to make faces feel more real. In some cases, they change the lighting or camera angles to hide mistakes. Every detail matters. Video game designers have their own tricks. They use eye tracking to make sure characters' eyes move the right way. They add random blinks, little mouth twitches, and head tilts. The goal is to fool your brain, even for a few seconds. But it's a constant battle. As games get more realistic, the margin for error gets smaller. And here's something else. As people get used to new technology, the uncanny valley sometimes shrinks. What felt creepy 10 years ago might feel normal today. Think about phone filters that put dog ears or funny faces on people. 20 years ago, that would have seemed bizarre. Now kids use them every day. Maybe, as more people grow up with digital faces, the feeling will fade. But for now, the uncanny valley is still here. It shows up in movies, games, and even virtual reality. It's a reminder that our brains are hard to fool. We're wired to spot the difference between real and almost real. And the closer we get, the more the tiny mistakes matter. The next time you watch a movie and something feels strange, listen to that feeling. It's your brain doing what it's always done, looking for life, looking for trust, looking for something real. In some ways, that's what makes us human, and while technology will keep getting better, the uncanny valley is a puzzle that might never be fully solved. Maybe that's okay. Maybe it's a sign that being human is more than just a face or a voice. It's the little things, the spark in an eye, the warmth in a smile, the way someone laughs at the right moment. Those are hard to fake. So the next time you see a digital hero or a robot on screen, remember what's really going on. It's not just about pixels or code. It's about your brain, your instincts, and the deep history behind every face you see. The uncanny valley is just one more way our minds remind us what matters: life, connection, and the search for something real. But the uncanny valley isn't just about technology. It shows up in places that might surprise you. Let's take a step even further back in time. Before computers, before movies, before electricity. The uncanny valley isn't new. People have felt it for hundreds, even thousands of years. It just showed up in different forms. Sometimes it was a doll, a mask, or a statue. These weren't made with pixels or code. They were shaped by hand, carved from wood, moulded from clay or sewn together from scraps. But even then, people noticed when something looked almost human, but not quite. Imagine walking into an old house, maybe late at night. There's a shelf in the corner. On it sits a porcelain doll. It's dressed in tiny lace clothes. Its eyes are wide open, staring straight ahead. The face is painted with careful detail, but the skin is too smooth. The eyes are made of glass. The mouth is frozen in a half smile. In the dim light it looks almost alive, but not enough. That's when you get a chill. Your mind races. What if it moves? What if it blinks? Most people have felt this at least once. It's the uncanny valley, but in toy form. Dolls have been around for thousands of years. The oldest ones archaeologists found are over 4,000 years old. Ancient Egyptian children played with dolls made of wood or clay. Some had hair made from string. Others had painted faces. In Rome, children had dolls carved from ivory or bone. These early toys were simple. No moving eyes, no joints. But even then, some dolls were made to look more and more real. By the 1800s and 1900s, doll makers in Germany and France were competing to create the most lifelike faces. They used porcelain for smooth skin, glass for eyes that seemed to follow you, soft bodies that could bend at the joints. Parents loved them. Children cherished them. But there was always a point where the realism tipped over. Some dolls looked too real. They stared too hard. Their smiles seemed to hide secrets. Stories began to spread about haunted dolls, cursed toys, things that moved on their own. Even today, movies and books use these old dolls to scare us. The feeling is the same as with digital faces, almost real, but not quite. Our brains notice the difference and we get uneasy. Let's switch to masks. Masks have a long history. People used them in rituals, plays, festivals, and ceremonies. Some masks were simple, just basic shapes and colours. Others tried to copy the human face as closely as possible. Think about Japanese no theatre. Actors wear wooden masks that show different emotions. The masks are carved and painted with great care. From a distance they look almost alive, but up close, something feels off. The face doesn't move. The eyes are empty holes. The mouth never changes. When the actor tilts, the mask, the light shifts, and the expression seems to change. Sad, happy, angry, all at once. It's both beautiful and strange. The feeling is familiar, almost human, but missing something. In Africa, masks are used in many ceremonies. Some are meant to look like spirits or ancestors. These masks might have human features, but they're always a little bit different. Bigger eyes, longer noses, painted stripes. The changes make them both familiar and otherworldly. They remind people of the spirit world, not just the world of the living. The effect is powerful. You know it's not a real face, but you can't look away. Sometimes the mask is meant to frighten. Other times, it's meant to protect. Either way, it works because it sits right on the edge between human and not quite human. Now think about religious statues. In old churches and temples, you'll find statues of saints, gods, or angels. Many are carved with amazing skill. The faces are calm, the eyes gentle, some are painted in bright colours, others left plain. People might kneel in front of them, pray or leave offerings. But sometimes, if you're alone in a quiet church, the statues can feel unsettling, especially if the eyes seem to follow you, or the hands are reaching out. Some statues have glass eyes, real hair, even teeth. The goal is to make them look holy, powerful, and real. But if the artist goes too far, the effect can be creepy. There's a line between awe and fear, and these statues sometimes cross it. Let's talk about automata. These were like early robots. In the 1700s and 1800s, rich people in Europe loved mechanical toys. Craftsmen built tiny figures that could move, play music, or even write messages. There were birds that sang, dolls that walked, and little people who waved or bowed. Some automata were shaped like children or women in fancy dresses. The faces were painted to look real. The movements were smooth, but not perfect. If you wound up the toy and watched it move, you might be amazed at first. But after a while, the jerky motions and fixed smiles could start to feel strange. People wondered, was this just a toy or something more? The feeling was like seeing a puppet with its own mind. There's a famous example called the Silver Swan. Built in 1773, it was a life-sized mechanical swan that sat in a glass case. When it was wound up, the swan turned its head, looked around, and dipped its beak into water to catch a fish. The movement was smooth for its time, almost lifelike. People came from all over to see it. Some were delighted, others left feeling uneasy. It was so close to real, but they knew it wasn't alive. The uncanny valley showed up even in the age of gears and springs. Let's switch to ventriloquist dummies. These puppets were popular in the 1900s. A performer would sit on stage with a dummy on their knee, moving its mouth and eyes while making it talk. The best dummies had moving eyebrows, blinking eyes, and wide grins. In the bright lights of the stage they seemed to come alive, but up close, in a dark room, they could be terrifying. The painted faces, staring eyes, and unnatural smiles made people nervous. Horror movies picked up on this. Dummies became a symbol for things that looked alive but weren't. They made people laugh and scream for the same reason, the uncanny valley. There are stories about ventriloquist dummies moving on their own or whispering at night. Even if you know it's just a toy, your mind plays tricks. The dummy looks like it's thinking. It looks like it could blink at any moment. That edge between fake and real is where your imagination runs wild. Let's look at another example. Wax museums. These places are filled with life-sized figures of famous people. Some are so detailed you can see tiny wrinkles, freckles, and veins. The hair is real. The clothes are perfect. When you walk through, you might do a double take. Is that a real person or just a statue? Sometimes the effect is amazing. Other times, it's unsettling. The eyes are too glassy, the skin is too shiny, the figure stands too still. If you stare for too long, you start to hope it doesn't move. Wax museums have been around for over 200 years. Marie Tussaud, who started the famous Madame Tussauds Museum, learned to make wax heads during the French Revolution. She made models of famous people, some living, some dead. Crowds would visit to see kings, queens, and heroes up close. The thrill was in the realism, but there was always a risk. The more lifelike the figure, the more people noticed what was missing. The spark of life, the warmth of real skin. That tension is why wax museums are both popular and a little bit creepy. Let's not forget mannequins. Every time you walk through a clothing store, you see them. Mannequins have smooth faces, perfect bodies, and blank stares. They show off the latest fashions. Some are just basic shapes. Others have painted faces, eyelashes, and wigs. A few even have moving parts, arms that bend, heads that turn. In the 1950s and 60s, stores started using more realistic mannequins. Some had glass eyes or even breathing chests. The goal was to make the clothes look as good as possible. But shoppers sometimes felt uncomfortable. The mannequins were too close to real people. If you caught one in the corner of your eye, you might think someone was watching you. Some stores went back to making mannequins less lifelike. Today, most are stylized, No faces, no details, just smooth shapes. It's easier on the nerves. Here's another angle: ancient art. In places like Greece and Rome, artists tried to capture the perfect human form. Statues were made to look strong, beautiful, and alive. Some were painted in bright colours, others were left plain. When you walk through a museum, you might see statues with blank eyes, missing arms, or cracked faces. They're beautiful, but there's something haunting about them. They're frozen in time. You can almost imagine them coming to life, stepping off their pedestals. Stories from ancient times tell of statues that moved or spoke. People were both drawn to and afraid of images that seemed too real. Let's talk about puppets. In Europe and Asia, puppets were used for centuries in plays and festivals. Some were simple, just cloth and wood. Others were made to look like tiny people, with painted faces and jointed arms. In Japan, bunraku puppets are controlled by several people at once. The movements are smooth and elegant. The faces are blank, but the body language is detailed. The puppets can show sadness, anger, joy, or fear. The audience knows they're not real, but in the dark theatre it's easy to forget. The line between human and puppet blurs. In horror stories, puppets sometimes come to life. They walk, talk, or even attack. The idea is scary because it takes something familiar, a toy, a tool, a piece of art, and pushes it just past the edge of comfort. The uncanny valley is at work again. Let's not forget about masks in modern times. In Venice, Italy, the carnival is famous for its beautiful masks. Some are decorated with gold, feathers, and jewels. Others are simple white faces with empty eyes and red lips. When people put them on, they become someone else. The face hides behind the mask. In a crowd, you might see 100 masked faces staring at you. It's exciting, but also a little bit eerie. The masks are too smooth. The eyes don't blink, the mouth never moves. You know there's a real person underneath, but you can't be sure who it is. In some cultures, masks are believed to hold special powers. They can protect, frighten, or bring luck. Sometimes wearing a mask is a way to connect with spirits or ancestors. The mask is both human and not human. It's a tool for play, but also for mystery. Let's consider one more example: medical mannequins. Doctors and nurses use them to practice surgery, CPR, and other skills. The mannequins are made to look and feel like real people. Some even breathe or bleed. The idea is to make the experience as close to real life as possible, but students sometimes feel uneasy working on these models. The skin is cold and rubbery. The eyes stare blankly. The body moves, but only when you force it. Even though it's just a dummy, the experience can be unsettling. It's close to real, but not quite there. All of these examples show that the uncanny valley isn't just about technology. It's a deep part of human experience. Whenever we try to copy ourselves, to make a doll, a mask, a statue, or a puppet, we run into the same problem. We want it to look real, but if it gets too close, we start to feel uncomfortable. There's a tiny gap between what's alive and what's just pretending. That gap is where the strange feeling lives. Why does this happen? Some scientists think it's about survival. If you can quickly spot the difference between a real person and a fake, you stay safe. Maybe you avoid sickness. Maybe you spot a threat. Maybe you can tell when something is wrong with someone's health. Our brains are wired to notice tiny details: how eyes move, how skin changes colour, how a smile spreads across a face. Artists and creators have been bumping into the uncanny valley for centuries. Sometimes they lean into it on purpose. In theatre, a mask that looks almost real can add drama or fear. In religious art, a statue that seems alive can inspire awe. In toys, a doll that's just a little too real can become the centre of ghost stories. Other times, artists pull back. They make things more stylized, more cartoonish, to avoid the strange feeling. The choice depends on the story they want to tell. Over time, what feels strange can change. In the 1800s, people loved dolls with glass eyes and porcelain faces. Today, those same dolls can seem creepy. Maybe it's because we're used to plastic, toys and cartoon faces. Or maybe it's because our brains are always looking for that spark of life. Some people are more sensitive to the uncanny valley than others. A child might love a lifelike doll, while an adult finds it unsettling. One person might enjoy a puppet show, while another feels nervous. It's personal. It depends on your experiences, your culture, and even your mood. What's clear is that the uncanny valley is everywhere. It's not just in movies or video games. It shows up in art, toys, masks, statues, and even in the things we use to learn and heal. It's a reminder that we're experts at spotting life. We know, deep down, what's real and what's not. And when something sits on the edge, our brains ring the alarm. So, next time you see an old doll in an antique shop, or a mannequin in a dark window, pay attention to that feeling. It's the same one people felt centuries ago. It's part of being human. All of this raises a fascinating question. Is the uncanny valley getting stronger or weaker as we see more artificial humans? Here's the thing. The uncanny valley isn't frozen in time. It's not just a problem from the past. It's changing right now, and it'll keep changing as the world does. The next big question is simple. As technology gets better, will the uncanny valley fade away, or will it get even deeper? Let's start with the obvious. There are more human-like machines and images today than ever before. Walk down a busy street, and you'll see digital ads with moving faces. Go online, and you'll meet AI chatbots with friendly names and cartoon avatars. Watch movies, and you'll see computer-generated faces that are almost perfect. Some actors have even been brought back to life with digital tricks, showing up in new films years after they've died. Each step forward makes the line between real and fake a little blurrier. Think about robots. The old ones look nothing like people, just metal arms and blinking lights. They worked in factories, far from daily life. But now some robots are built to help out at home or care for the elderly. They have soft skin, blinking eyes, and voices that sound almost human. In Japan, there's a robot named Erica. She can hold a conversation, move her head, and even change her facial expression. People sit across from her and talk about their lives. Some forget just for a moment that she isn't real. But for others, something still feels off. The movements are too smooth, or not smooth enough. The eyes don't quite match the words. The uncanny valley pops up again. It's not just robots. Video games have pushed hard against the limits of realism. Early games used blocky characters with simple faces. Nobody expected Mario or Sonic to look real. But now, the biggest games use motion capture suits and powerful computers to create faces that smile, frown, and even cry. Some games let you stare into a character's eyes and see tiny twitches, wrinkles, and shifting pupils. Most of the time it's impressive, but every so often a character's face will move in a way that doesn't quite match the emotion. Players feel a flicker of discomfort. It's not a bug in the game, it's a bug in our brains. Hollywood has chased the perfect digital human for years. In some movies, actors wear dots on their faces, and computers turn them into aliens or monsters. Other times, studios try to create a whole person from scratch. In 2004, the movie The Polar Express used motion capture to turn real actors into animated characters. The eyes were shiny and fixed. The skin looked waxy. Many people found the movie creepy, even though it was supposed to feel magical. The same thing happened with Tron Legacy and the digital young version of Jeff Bridges. The face was almost perfect, but not quite. Audiences noticed right away. As special effects got better, the uncanny valley got smaller, but it didn't disappear. Each time a new movie tries to cross that gap, people spot the tiny flaws, a smile that's too wide, eyes that don't blink at the right time, skin that looks more like plastic than flesh. The valley shifts, but it's always there. Now, let's talk about virtual reality, the world inside a headset. Here, you can meet other people as digital avatars. Sometimes these avatars look like cartoons. Sometimes they're meant to look just like you, with the same face, hair, and even the same voice. In a room full of cartoon faces, nobody feels weird. But if someone's avatar looks almost real but not quite, it can be unsettling. You might find yourself looking away or feeling awkward. Your brain knows it's not a real face, but it's close enough to trick you for a second. Social media adds another twist. Filters can change your face in real time, smoothing skin, making eyes bigger, or adding a fake smile. Some filters aim for beauty, but end up in that strange middle zone. You see yourself, but not really. It's a digital mask, and sometimes it's too good. People have started to worry about looking uncanny on video calls or in selfies. The fear is spreading. We're living with the uncanny valley every day, not just in movies or museums. Artificial intelligence is going even further. There are programs now that can create fake photos of people who don't exist. The faces look real at first glance. Clear eyes, perfect teeth, natural smiles. But stare a little longer, and you might spot something strange. Maybe the ears don't match. Maybe the hair looks painted on. Maybe the teeth are just a little too perfect. These AI-generated faces are getting better fast. Some experts think it's only a matter of time before we can't tell the difference at all. So what happens then? If computers can make faces that are completely convincing, does the uncanny valley finally disappear? Or does it just move somewhere else? Here's one idea. Some scientists think the uncanny valley is like a moving target. As we get used to new technology, the things that once felt creepy start to seem normal. Take video calls, for example. 20 years ago, talking to a moving face on a screen felt strange for most people. Now, it's part of everyday life. Kids grow up seeing digital avatars and cartoon faces everywhere. What felt weird to their parents might feel totally normal to them. The same thing happened with animation. Early cartoons had stiff movements and simple faces. Now, animated movies show emotions so well that audiences forget they're not watching real actors. Over time, we adapt. The valley doesn't go away, but it gets easier to cross. But not everyone agrees. Some experts say the uncanny valley is built into our brains. We're hardwired to spot the tiniest details in a human face. If something is off, even by a little, we notice. That feeling might never go away. No matter how good technology gets, the better the copy, the more. Our brains hunt for flaws. The valley gets narrower, but the drop feels just as deep. There's another theory too. Some people think the uncanny valley might actually get deeper as technology improves. Here's why. When something is clearly fake, our brains relax. We know it's not real, so there's no problem. But as the copy gets closer to perfect, the mistakes stand out more. It's like hearing a song where one note is off. The better the singer, the more you notice the mistake. The same goes for faces. The closer the fake face gets to real, the scarier it is when it slips up. Let's look at some real-life examples. In 2018, a robot named Sophia became famous for her lifelike face and ability to talk. She went on TV, gave interviews, and even joked with people, but many viewers felt uncomfortable. The mouth moved, but the words didn't always match. The eyes blinked, but not at the right time. The feeling was strong. People described Sophia as both fascinating and creepy. In South Korea, there's a company making robots for elderly care. Some of these robots are shaped like small children or friendly adults. They're designed to offer comfort, not just do chores. At first, people liked the idea until they saw the robots in person. Some users said the faces were too smooth, the smiles too fixed. They wanted robots that looked less human, not more. Meanwhile, in Silicon Valley, companies are making digital humans for customer service. They help answer questions, solve problems, and even tell jokes. Some are simple cartoons. Others look like real people. Surveys show that most customers prefer the less realistic versions. When the digital human gets too close to real, people feel uneasy. They say it's harder to trust a face that almost looks alive, but isn't. The trend isn't just in robots or movies, it's in medicine too. Doctors have started using virtual patients for training. These are digital faces that show pain, confusion, or fear. Medical students practice talking to them. The goal is to be as real as possible. But if the emotions aren't quite right, if a patient smiles while talking about pain or the eyes don't match the words, students notice right away. The training can actually get harder, not easier. There are even studies about how people react to digital faces. One experiment showed people a mix of real and computer-generated faces. The most realistic fake faces made people sweat, blink less, and feel nervous. The effect was strongest when the differences were tiny. Jawlines that were too smooth, eyes that didn't track movement, skin that glowed in the wrong light. Technology companies are trying to solve the problem. Some use special lighting or blur effects to hide the flaws. Others design faces with small imperfections, tiny wrinkles, freckles, or scars. The idea is to trick the brain into feeling at ease. But it's a moving target. Every time the technology gets better, our brains get better at spotting what's wrong. So, will the uncanny valley ever go away? It depends on who you ask. Some say yes. They believe that once digital faces are perfect, our brains won't notice. The valley will fill in and will accept robots, avatars, and digital actors as just another part of life. Others think the valley is here to stay. No matter how good the copy, our brains are built to find the tiniest mistake. The feeling might get weaker, but it won't disappear. Instead, we might just get used to living with it. There's also a cultural side to all this. In some countries, people are more comfortable with robots or digital faces. In Japan, for example, robots are often seen as friendly helpers. People enjoy robots that look and act like humans. In other places, like the United States or parts of Europe, people are more cautious. They might see lifelike robots as strange or even threatening. This shows that the uncanny valley isn't just about technology, it's about culture too. Age matters as well. Younger people who grow up with digital faces and AI might have a smaller uncanny valley. They see new technology as normal. Older people who remember a time before digital everything might find it harder to adapt. The gap between real and fake feels bigger to them. There's also the question of trust. In a world filled with deepfakes, videos or photos that show people doing things they never did, it's getting harder to know what's real. Some worry that the uncanny valley might actually help us. If we feel uneasy around digital faces, maybe that's a warning. Maybe it keeps us from being fooled by fakes. Our brains might protect us by sounding the alarm when something isn't quite right. But that defense only works if the fakes can't cross the valley. What happens when they do? If technology gets so good that we can't tell the difference, will we lose the ability to trust our own senses, or will we develop new ways to spot the clues? Some scientists are studying this question right now. They use brain scans to see how people react to real and fake faces. Early results show that the brain lights up in different places when looking at each one. But when the fake is almost perfect, the brain struggles. It takes longer to figure out what's wrong. People feel uneasy, but can't always say why. Here's an interesting twist. Sometimes, the uncanny valley can be used on purpose. Horror movies often make monsters or ghosts just a little too human. The effect is stronger than a rubber mask or a cartoon. It's the almost but not quite that gives you chills. As technology improves, filmmakers and artists might use the uncanny valley as a tool to scare, to surprise, or just to make you think. On the other hand, some people want to avoid the valley entirely. Companies that make robots for kids or for classrooms keep the design simple and cartoonish. Big eyes, round faces, soft voices. The idea is to be cute, not real. It works. Kids trust the robots, play with them, even talk to them like friends. There's also a growing movement in art and design called anti-realism. Instead of trying to make everything look perfect, artists lean into the flaws. They use bold colours, strange shapes, and obvious lines. The message is clear. This is not a real person. It's okay to relax. Looking ahead, the future of the uncanny valley is up in the air. Technology will keep getting better. Digital faces will get more convincing. Robots will learn new tricks. Deepfakes will get harder to spot, but our brains will keep changing too. What feels creepy today might seem normal in 10 years, or maybe the valley will just move, showing up in new places we can't predict. One thing is certain, this strange feeling isn't going away soon. It's part of how we understand the world. As we build new things that look and act like us, we'll keep bumping into the uncanny valley. Sometimes we'll cross it, sometimes we'll fall in. Either way, the journey isn't over, so as you look at the world around you, at robots, avatars, digital faces, remember that the uncanny valley is always shifting. It's shaped by technology, by culture, by age, and by trust. Maybe someday we'll cross it for good, or maybe it'll always be there, reminding us of what it means to be truly human. Before we close, let's step back and consider what all of this tells us about being human. So, let's dig into what all of this actually tells us about being human. The uncanny valley isn't just a weird reaction to robots or digital faces. It's like a secret message from our brains hidden in plain sight. When we feel that jolt of something isn't right, we're learning something about how our minds work, and maybe even about what matters most to us as people. First, there's our focus on faces. Humans are face experts, even as babies. A newborn will stare at a human face longer than at a toy or a pattern. By the time we're a few months old, we can already tell the difference between a friendly face and an angry one. We notice tiny things, like the way someone's eyebrows move, or how their mouth curves when they smile. That skill is deep in our brains. It's part of how we survived. Reading faces helped our ancestors know who to trust, who to avoid, and who might share food or protect them. The uncanny valley pops up when something looks close enough to a real face. But not quite. It's a reflex, a built-in alarm. It means our brains are always on the lookout for the real thing. But there's more. The uncanny valley isn't just about faces. It's about what we expect from other people. Think about how you react when someone stands too close, or when a stranger copies the way you talk. It feels off, right? That's because we have strong ideas about what's normal and what's not. The uncanny valley is one more sign that our brains set boundaries between us and not us, between safe and maybe dangerous. When something falls in the middle, we get uneasy. It's almost like a test. Is this friend or foe? Real or fake? Some scientists believe this goes back even further. Long ago, humans had to spot the difference between a living person and someone who was sick or dead. There were real dangers, disease, attack, even trickery. If you couldn't spot the warning signs, you might get hurt. So, the feeling we get from the uncanny valley might be an old defense system. It kept us alive by making us pay attention to the details. Maybe it still does. Now, let's look at how the uncanny valley shapes our ideas about what it means to be alive. When we see a robot or an avatar that almost looks human, we start to ask weird questions. Is this thing alive? Does it have feelings? Could it think, or learn, or change? We know deep down that it's not a person, but our brains aren't so sure. That confusion says something about us. We want to see ourselves in the world around us, even in metal and code, but we also want clear lines. We want to know who's real. This gets even more interesting when we look at how people treat animals. Some animals, like dogs or cats, have faces that we can read. They look at us, blink, and move in ways we understand. People often talk to pets like they're little humans. But when an animal's face is hard to read, like a snake or a fish, we don't connect as easily. The uncanny valley shows up here too. The closer an animal looks to us, the more we want it to act like us. If it doesn't, we feel uneasy. It's a reminder that being human is about more than just looks. It's about the tiny signals we send and pick up, almost without thinking. Let's talk about another angle: empathy. The uncanny valley might teach us about how we feel for others. When something looks almost human, we try to connect. We want to see emotion, to feel what the other person feels. But if the signals don't match up, if the face smiles but the eyes are cold or the voice is flat, we stop trusting. Our empathy hits a wall. That might be why the uncanny valley feels so strong. It's our brain's way of saying, wait, something's missing here. Don't let your guard down yet. It's a gut check, and it happens before we even know it. Here's something else. The uncanny valley makes us face the limits of technology. We build machines to be faster, smarter, and more lifelike every year. But even as we get closer to making perfect copies, there's always a gap. That gap isn't just about tech, it's about us. Our brains are wired for real life, not perfect copies. When we bump into the uncanny valley, it's a sign. There's more to being human than just how we look or sound. There's a kind of spark, a messiness, something that can't be built or faked. Maybe it's emotion, maybe it's a soul, or maybe it's just that real. People are never quite perfect. This also ties into creativity. Humans are amazing at making things up. Stories, art, music, even new faces. The uncanny valley reminds us of the power of imagination, but also its limits. We can get close to the real thing, but copying isn't the same as creating. The valley is like a border between what's possible and what's real. It tells us there's something special about the original. No matter how good the copy, something gets lost along the way. Let's look at another piece: rituals and beliefs. All over the world, people have made statues, masks, and dolls that look like people. Some are used for worship, some for play, others for magic or storytelling. Often these objects are just lifelike enough to feel special, but not so real that they make us uncomfortable. When a mask is too perfect, or a doll looks almost alive, people sometimes get spooked. In some cultures, there are even rules about not making images that look too much, like a real person. Maybe this is the uncanny valley at work, an old warning hidden inside our rituals. There's a story from ancient Greece about a sculptor named Pygmalion. He carved a statue so beautiful and lifelike that he fell in love with it. The gods took pity and brought the statue to life. It's a tale about the longing to create something real, and maybe about the risks. The uncanny valley is like the shadow side of that dream. When we try to make something too close to real, we start to feel uneasy. It's a line we're always tempted to cross, but rarely do without a chill. Think about play and imagination. Kids talk to stuffed animals and action figures all the time. They know these things aren't real, but for a while they pretend. The faces are simple. 2 dots for eyes, a line for a mouth. It's enough. But if a toy started moving on its own, or if its face changed when you weren't looking, it would get creepy fast. That's the uncanny valley again. We're comfortable with things that are clearly pretend. But when the line blurs, our brains sound the alarm. The uncanny valley also shows us how much we care about trust. When we meet someone new, we use small clues to decide if we can trust them. A real smile, steady eyes, the right tone of voice. When those clues are missing or mixed up, we back away. The same thing happens with robots or digital faces. If we can't trust what we see or hear, we feel off balance. That feeling keeps us careful. It's a warning system, shaped by thousands of years of real-life meetings. Let's talk about change. The uncanny valley isn't just a fixed reaction. It changes as we do. 100 years ago, people might have felt uneasy around moving pictures or loudspeakers. Now we don't even blink. As new tech shows up, our brains adapt. What's strange today might be normal tomorrow, but the valley never disappears completely. It just moves. Each time we get used to something new, there's another line waiting to be crossed. This reaction also connects to loneliness. In a world where we see more screens than faces, the uncanny valley might be getting wider. We crave real connection. We want to feel seen, heard, understood. When a digital face almost delivers that feeling but misses, it reminds us of what we're missing. It's like reaching out for a hand and grabbing thin air. The valley isn't just about fear. Sometimes it's about longing. Now, let's look at art. Artists have played with the uncanny valley for centuries, long before robots or computers. Think of wax museums with their strange, silent crowds, or portrait paintings that seem to watch you across the room. Some artists lean into the weirdness, using almost real faces to make you think or feel uneasy. Others avoid it, going for bold colours and simple lines. The uncanny valley becomes a tool, a way to make people look twice, or question what's real. Here's another twist. The uncanny valley isn't the same for everyone. Some people find lifelike robots or digital faces charming, even cute. Others get creeped out right away. Scientists think this might be tied to personality, past experiences, or even genetics. Some brains are just more sensitive to the gap between real and almost real. This means the valley is both personal and shared. It's different for each of us, but it connects us too. Let's not forget about memory. Our brains are great at filling in blanks. When we see a blurry face or a shadow, we guess what's there. But when a face is almost right, almost but not quite, our brains can't make the leap. It's stuck between believing and not believing. That gap is the uncanny valley. It's a reminder that our minds are powerful but not perfect. We want things to make sense, and when they don't, we feel it deep down. There's also the question of what makes us unique. The Uncanny Valley shows us that being human isn't just about how we look. It's about how we move, how we feel, how we connect. We're more than the sum of our parts. A perfect copy can't replace the real thing because there's something in us, call it spirit, spark or soul, that can't be faked. The Uncanny Valley is a hint at that mystery. Now, think about the future. As technology gets better, we'll face the Uncanny Valley in new ways. We might talk to digital assistants that sound just like old friends. We might see loved ones brought back with video or audio. Each time we'll have to decide what feels real and what doesn't. The valley will keep moving, but the questions stay the same. What does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to be human? The Uncanny Valley also nudges us to ask about responsibility. If we build things that trick people, deepfakes, fake news, or even lifelike robots, do we owe it to ourselves to keep a clear line? Should we make sure people know what's real and what's fake? The Valley is a warning and maybe a guide. It reminds us that trust is fragile and that technology is a tool we have to use with care. Here's a strange thought. Sometimes the Uncanny Valley brings people together. When we share that weird feeling, when we all notice something isn't right, we connect. It's a shared moment, a little shiver that says, I see it too. In a way, the valley is part of our social glue. It helps us spot what's real, and it gives us something to talk about. Even as the world changes, that feeling links us. Let's go even deeper. The Uncanny Valley might teach us about our own limits. We want to understand everything, to master every skill, to copy and create. But some things can't be fully understood or copied. There will always be a gap between the real and the almost real. The valley is a reminder to stay humble. Some mysteries are meant to be felt, not solved. And here's the final twist. The Uncanny Valley isn't just about fear or discomfort. It's about wonder too. It shows us how amazing our brains are, how quickly we spot tiny flaws, how we search for meaning, how we care about what's real. It's a sign of how far we've come and how much we still have to learn. So the next time you feel that spark of weirdness when you see a robot smile or a digital face blink, remember, it's not just a glitch. It's a message from your mind. It's proof that being human is more than skin deep. It's about connection, trust, and that strange invisible line between real and almost real. And so we come to the end of our journey through this strange valley in the human mind. So we've travelled a long way through the Uncanny Valley tonight. We've looked at robots, faces, art, and the strange reactions we get from things that are almost, but not quite, human. Before we let the subject drift away, let's try to pull together what all this means for people living right now, and maybe for the future too. First, let's think about how quickly the world is changing around us. Just within a few decades, we've gone from simple machines and clunky computers to digital assistants, lifelike video games, and robots that can hold a conversation. Every year, the line between real and almost real gets thinner. The Uncanny Valley doesn't block progress, but it does slow us down. It forces us to pause and ask, am I comfortable with this? That pause is important. It gives us time to think before we simply accept every new thing that comes along. There's a real power in that pause. Not everything new is better just because it's shiny or advanced. The weird feeling from the Uncanny Valley is like a brake pedal for our imagination. It tells us, wait, something's off here. Sometimes it keeps us safe. Other times it helps us notice when something is missing. It's not always fear. Sometimes it's just caution. Let's get practical for a minute. In hospitals, companies have tried using lifelike robots to comfort lonely people or help with therapy. Some patients love them, especially if the robot is clearly a toy like a seal or a puppy. But when robots start to look too much like people, many patients pull away. They say the machines feel cold, even if they're helpful. Nurses have noticed that patients talk more to simple, friendly robots than to ones with perfect faces and voices. It's like our brains are saying, "Give me something real," or "Give me something clearly fake. Don't give me something in the middle." You can see this in video games too. Some games use cartoon-like characters. Others try for ultra-realistic faces and movements. The ones that land in the middle sometimes get called creepy. Players say they can't connect to the characters or feel for them the same way. Studios have learned to lean into stylized art or to go all in on realism, but not to stop halfway. The Uncanny Valley sets the rules, even if most people can't. Name it. Now, let's flip things around. The Uncanny Valley isn't just about technology or art. It can show up in real life too. Imagine you're at a family gathering and you see a distant cousin you haven't met before. They look almost like your uncle, but not quite. Maybe the smile is too wide, or the eyes don't match the rest of the face. For a second, your brain does a double take. You know it's just a person, but you feel a flash of confusion. That's your mind doing fast math, comparing faces you know against one you don't. It's the same basic process. Or think about dreams. Sometimes people in your dreams look almost like someone you know, but not exactly. Their face might be blurry, or their voice just a little wrong. When you wake up, you remember that weird feeling. Dream experts say our brains use shortcuts when building faces in dreams. The result? A dream version that's close, but not the real thing. Another Uncanny Valley, only this one happens when you're asleep. Let's talk about the upside of all this. Most of the time, the Uncanny Valley is talked about as a problem or something to avoid, but it's also a sign that humans are amazing at spotting details. Our eyes and brains can pick up on the smallest things, a twitch, a blink, the way light hits a cheek. This skill comes from thousands of years of paying attention. It helped our ancestors survive in a world full of surprises. Today, it helps us tell friend from stranger, real from fake, safe from unsafe. Some scientists are actually trying to figure out how to use the Uncanny Valley to help people. For example, in training programs for doctors or police, they sometimes use lifelike dolls or digital faces to teach how to spot tiny signs of pain, fear, or anger. The closer these training tools get to real life, without falling into the valley, the better people get at noticing details in real faces. It's like a workout for your empathy muscles. There's another side to this as well. The Uncanny Valley can help us understand why we value real connection so much. In a world filled with screens, texts, and digital images, we still crave face-to-face time. Even if a video call gets close, it's not quite the same as being in the same room. Your brain knows the difference. Your heart does too. The valley isn't just a warning, it's a reminder of what matters. Now, let's zoom out and think about history. 100 years ago, people worried about photos stealing the soul. 50 years ago, some were uneasy about actors on TV looking too real. Today, we worry about deepfakes, videos that can fake a person's face and voice so well that it's hard to tell if it's real. Each step forward brings new versions of the valley. Each time, we have to decide what feels right and what crosses the line. This brings up big questions about truth and trust. If we can fake a face or a voice perfectly, how do we know what's real? How do we protect ourselves from being tricked? The uncanny valley helps here too. That uneasy feeling is like an early warning system. It won't catch everything, but it gives us a chance to pause and take a closer look. In a way, it's a gift. Let's go even deeper for a second. The uncanny valley shows us that humans are always searching for meaning. We look for patterns, signals, and signs of life everywhere. When we see something that almost fits but not quite, it stands out. It bothers us. That's because we want to make sense of the world. We want the pieces to fit. When they don't, we notice. The valley is proof that our brains care deeply about what's real. It's also a sign that we're never really done growing. As technology moves forward, our ideas about what's normal will keep shifting. What feels strange now might seem everyday to kids born 10 years from now. The valley moves with us, always just ahead, always making us think twice. That's not a bad thing. It keeps us awake. It keeps us honest. Here's something hopeful. The uncanny valley isn't a wall we can't cross. It's more like a speed bump. Over time, we get used to things that once seemed weird. When the first talking dolls were invented, people thought they were haunted. Now, nobody bats an eye at a talking teddy bear. The same might happen with robots, digital faces, and whatever comes next. Our brains adapt. They learn new rules. The valley shifts, but it never really stops us for long. At the same time, some gaps might never close. There may always be some part of being human that can't be copied or faked. Maybe it's the way we laugh at the wrong time, or the small mistakes we make when we talk. Maybe it's the warmth in a real hug, or the energy in a crowded room. When we try to build perfect copies, the valley reminds us that real isn't just about looks or sounds. It's about feeling. It's about being alive. If this channel helps you sleep, that's sleep. The whole point, subscribe if you want and tell me where you're listening from. Now let's imagine the future for a moment. What if we reach a point where robots and digital people are so good we can't tell the difference? Some people think this would end the uncanny valley for good. Others say a new valley would appear, just in a different place. Maybe the line would move from looks to something deeper, like how we feel about trust, care, or even love. These are questions we'll have to answer together. One thing is clear. The uncanny valley is not just about fear, it's about curiosity too. It's that itch in your brain when something almost makes sense, but not quite. It's a space where questions live. What does it mean to be real? Can a machine ever really feel? What makes a face, a voice, or a moment truly human? The valley doesn't answer these questions, but it keeps us asking. It's also a reminder of how connected we all are. Most people, no matter where they live or what language they speak, know the feeling of being creeped out by something almost human. It's a common thread, running through every age and culture. The details might change, but the basic reaction is the same. That's rare. It means the uncanny valley is part of the human story. As we end this journey, maybe the best lesson is a simple one. We need space for wonder and for questions. We need to respect the strange, the almost, and the not quite. The uncanny valley isn't a mistake. It's not a glitch in our brains. It's a sign that we care about what's real. It's a sign that we're always looking for something true in the world, even when we can't quite put our finger on it. So the next time you get that shiver, that something's off feeling, you'll know it's just your mind doing its job. It's looking for meaning, for truth, for connection. That gap, the valley itself, isn't empty. It's full of questions. It's full of possibility. And maybe, just maybe, That's what makes us human after all. Let your thoughts wander for a bit. Let your mind rest on these mysteries. The world is full of strange puzzles, and the uncanny valley is just one of them. It's a place where curiosity lives, where old instincts meet new ideas, and where wonder never really goes away. As you drift towards sleep, remember this. The valley between real and almost real is where some of our best questions live. It's a space for noticing, for feeling, for being alive. And as long as we keep asking questions about faces, about trust, about what it means to be human, we'll never run out of things to explore. The journey never really ends. It just grows, one question at a time.